All right. See how we can do here. Let's see. Let's see. Will we start the show? Am I there? I think I am. Sorry for these long-winded, weird starts where you don't really, I just can't tell for a good chunk of time that I've started, but it looks as though I've started. And yeah, we can skip that. Okay, perfect. Welcome, everybody. Hash Church Season 11, Episode 36. And I am in Quebec. I'm hoping that it's all going proper here. I'm going to read some of what you guys are saying because this computer's old and it's kind of a piece of shit. And I'm not really 100% sure that it's going to be good for us. Am I coming through okay? Everything's good. It's not choppy or anything like that. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So listen, let's get right to it. I'd like to shout out the sponsors. I want to apologize to the sponsors because I'm on this piece of shit computer and I, for whatever reason, don't have a very good, I don't know, I can't access the logos the way they normally look. So they kind of look like a X-ray version of themselves. So I know that Puffco and the press club will be understanding as they have always been understanding. So let's get into it. First of all, I want to thank the press club, trusted by top hash makers from around the world since 2016. The press club is our one-stop shop for award-winning solventless gear, from press bags to wash bags to presses and to vessels. You'll find everything you need from wash to press at thepressclub.co. We're big fans of these guys and what they're doing in the community, so we're excited to have them on board as an official sponsor for Hash Church. They've sponsored like the last 20 episodes, and they're sponsoring the next 20. Made in the USA, patented pink stitch, zero blowout guarantee. It's a small family-owned business with free expedited shipping over $75 with international shipping available. You can visit them at www.thepressclub.co and use the code HashChurch to take 10% off your purchase. You can discover the Press Club's premium washing and pressing screens crafted for flawless hash extraction. You can elevate your process with their innovative hash collection spoon designed for precision and efficiency. And as a proud family-owned business, they're obviously once again offering free shipping on orders over $75. Shout out to the Press Club. Now, I got to do it individually for each one with these logos, just the way I've managed to do it today. So next up, we're going to shout out Le Puffco, and I apologize to Puffco. The logo is super weird and dark and just not normal. But you shall and should ignite your dabbing journey with Puffco. They have revolutionized the art of dabbing, bringing concentrates to the mainstream world with unmatched style and innovation. From their pocket-sized Puffco pivot, delivering portable 3D chamber flavor, to the Peak Pro, the ultimate smart rig with Bluetooth precision and massive clouds, especially with the 3D XL bowl, and the modular proxy. It's a sipper, not a ripper. Redefining versatility with its sleek, customizable design, Puffco sets the gold standard for hash enthusiasts everywhere. Their cutting-edge tech has made dabbing approachable, flavorful, and fun, inspiring a global community of concentrate connoisseurs. We're beyond stoked to have Puffco as a proud sponsor of Hash Church, fueling our passion for sharing the love of hash with the world. You can shop the Pivot, the Peak Pro, the Proxy, and more at puffco.com and join the dabbing revolution. Awesome. Well, last but certainly not least, I got to, rep my own company, Bubble Bags. We've been doing this for about 27 or 28 years now, if you can imagine. Very long time. So obviously, Bubble Bags, we stand out as the premier choice for water hash extraction, and it's no surprise why. We are the original innovators who set the standard for quality and performance. Crafted with durability in mind, these bags come with a lifetime warranty, ensuring you're covered for years of consistent use. The team behind Bubble Bags, well, we take pride in our pioneering legacy, backing every product with unwavering confidence and a commitment to excellence, making us the trusted go-to for enthusiasts and professionals alike seeking top-tier hash extraction results. Check us out at www.bubblebag.com. You can use the code HashChurch10, and that is going to get you a nice little 10% discount. Let me close some of this up because I'm on a tiny little 14-inch screen today, which is great that won't let me shut that down. We got some folks in the room that I'm going to let in. I hope they've been patient. patiently waiting for me to shout out our sponsors. I like to shout out the sponsors without anyone in the room. I just prefer it like that. It's what I do for the sponsors. So welcome, welcome, and welcome. I feel like I can smell the perfume of haze in the air. I mean, I must be mildly yeah, that's what I like to see. That is what I
African
like to
haze
see.
crossed with original haze.
Oh my God. African haze crossed with original haze. Listen, I'm so happy to have you guys on the show today. I want to shout out Caleb for linking us up. I had a great conversation the other day. And yeah, you guys are like, you're my tribe, you're my people. I grew haze back in the late 80s, the early 90s. Haze was my specialty. We had the 18-week haze that we used to call Hugo in Manitoba, because we grow it very big. You could get a couple pounds off of Hugo if you vegged it for 5 to 6 months and then flowered it. But everyone thought we were insane. They just couldn't understand why we would grow cultivars with such a long flowering period. But well, clearly they were missing the boat and not really understanding the unbelievably like delicious and enjoyable novelty of volatile organic compounds that long flowering narrow leaf drug cultivars. I said that for you, Skunkman Sam. I'm super stoked to have this conversation because obviously my dear friend and mentor Skunkman Sam, who passed away in January, was the haze was his favorite. He did breed the skunk number one, but the haze was certainly by miles his favorite. And I guess growing up and living next door to the Hayes brothers in Santa Cruz there probably didn't hurt for him to get exposed to all that deliciousness. But yeah, I think welcome to Etienne and welcome to Caleb. And maybe some introductions are in order. I don't know if you guys want to get right to introductions. Maybe Caleb wants to give you guys a pseudo introduction and then have you guys go. But you are the new faces here on Hash Church. And so obviously people would love to know who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing.
I can give a quick little introduction. What's up, Dave and Tony? Welcome to Hash Church. I ran into Dave at CannaFest last week, and within a week, we were able to get him up here on Hash Church. I first heard of Buddulero only earlier this year through Buddhist, and I was very blessed to be able to review some of the flower. And, I'm also very happy to see more people caring about long flowering varieties. And with that,
well, nice. Yeah. So my name's Dave. This is my father-in-law, Tony. This is the Buddulero, the real Buddulero. He's the guy that the company's named after. And then also my brother-in-law, Isaac, is the other part of this trio. So yeah, we're out here in Mendo. Stoked to be on. Thank you, Marcus and Caleb, both for giving us the opportunity to come on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks for creating the opportunity by doing something that so few are doing. We can all agree that when Prohibition came in, there were two key factors of Prohibition. Let's steal their trust. Right? They wanted to steal our trust. They wanted to make it so we didn't trust each other anymore, that we would rat each other out, and that they just created dissent in our community in a big way. The other thing I think Prohibition hurt more than anything is long flowering cultivars, because Prohibition became all about how much can I get and how fast can I get it. And this was a death blow to long flowering cultivars, that people were just like, oh, I got a 5.5 weeker, they'd say it to me with like pride. And I'd just be like, damn, I'm sorry to hear that, bro. Like, that's rough. Like 5.5 weeks. Like, what are you growing? Like preemie, immature? Like, I'd rather grow a 26-week flower that like had nothing but calyxes on it and just a little bit of stalks. I did speak with Dave the other day there, and he was telling me about your Holy Grail cultivar that you found finally after so many years. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So this is the African haze, original haze, pearl type plants. So in the greenhouse, we ended up with different pearl type plants, not just from the destroyer, which is the pearls that Tony found, and he can explain a little bit about that. So, but yeah, this is kind of what the pearls look like.
Yeah, they look like the destroyer pearls are weeping. They we got pictures.
Yeah.
Here, I got pictures.
I'll make it sure that you guys can share. Let me just.
That's
sure
original haze.
Give him a second, Tony.
Oh, okay.
Can you see the screen?
No, I gotta find the share button. For some reason, my screen is so small. Oh, there we go. There's a green button in the middle that says share, and I'm gonna make it so everyone in the room should be able to do that. But otherwise, if you go to share and you click that, there it is. Now it'll ask me for permission. Boom, there you go. You got permission to share.
Where?
So, yeah, it's kind of tricky. When you push the share button, it'll open a bunch of boxes, and you want to find the one that's just your picture. We're having a funny conversation about this the other day.
There.
Here we
Can
go.
you see it?
Not yet.
It takes a second sometimes to catch.
You still don't see the picture?
No, we don't. It hasn't shared yet. No, I don't. It shouldn't take that long. It says multiple participants can share. So you push that green button, and then a box opens up, and you have to click one of the boxes that you want to share, and then push the blue button share at the bottom.
It gives you every open screen on your computer. Select the one that has the photos that you want, and then click share, and it should come up.
Click that on.
Oh, my computer's just jacked. I'm typing, and then like
it wants me to leave the meeting.
Oh, don't leave the meeting. It wants you to leave the meeting and come back.
Don't do that.
Oh, yeah. You could if you. It will. You could try that. It might be a weird reset or something that usually it works pretty simple, but
it's just changing the system setting to use my camera.
Yeah. Okay. Well, whatever you guys got to do.
Hopefully he'll be right back.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited. I had a good conversation with Dave the other day while I was driving from Farnham to Montreal, and yeah, I was excited about everything that he said and told me about, and just I was in Farnham making temple balls, so I held up one of my temple balls from yesterday. These
what
are made
varietal is that?
This is triple burger, and it's only dry sift. So I was showing this group how you can make temple balls without putting oil in the hash, which is a kind of a trick that they've been doing in India and Nepal for a long time. Afghanistan too. There we go. Talk about those temple balls later for sure. Oh, you guys let's mute one of your mics. I'll mute that one. There you go. You're done. There's Dr. Mark popping in. Yeah, I muted Dave's mic, but yours, we can hear you, but we can't see your screen yet.
Do you go to share?
Go to share.
Yeah, push the share button.
I'm on a hash church.
You are on a hash church, Etienne.
I love you.
Success.
Oh, we see it. Although you kind of picked a funny one where you've got the photo, but you've also got like the rest of the Zoom screen. That's okay.
I'll move it over.
See the photo. You should be able to choose when you share only the photo for like the next photo that you try to do. You should be able to do that. Oh, wow. Look at that. Is that like in the 70s there? Look at that thing.
Now see.
Dude.
This is me in the 70s.
Hell yeah.
That was one of the first. Now I can't move this. There we go. The title bar keeps coming down, so I can't change it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because you're sharing your entire desktop instead of just the photo.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the pictures here. Here we go. So here's a close-up of the pearls as they're growing.
What is that like a 20
Turn that
plus
thing
week
off.
flower? It's a flower period on that.
This one actually is a 12-weeker.
12 weeks it does that?
I've found from 12 to 20 week. Just shut it off. Oops.
That's insane. That is
There's
insane.
all different. There's African haze haze. There's the plant of African haze haze.
Damn.
There's a box of pearls. That's what they look like close up. You could see how the calyxes are just completely exposed and completely covered, including the stems and the leaves, with frost.
Oh my God, dude.
These
Man,
are
I'll
all
tell you.
indoor grown.
It's funny
So
how
they're hard to grow because they tangle together.
That makes sense. And
There's
they are
some
weeping.
original haze.
Oh yeah, there we go. So where did that original? When you say
And
original
I found
haze,
original haze that does pearls too.
oh, okay. Yeah, that looks fucking nice.
There's packaged
pearls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just like, oh man, I'm telling you,
Yeah, you can
I
see
love
the
it.
plants are beautiful.
Oh man, it's making my mouth water.
Yeah, it is mouth watering, totally.
I can concur because my mouth is
it's
watering.
some of the best. It's
82 photos to your text messages.
Oh, okay.
You can pull those up just the same you did these.
It's my favorite smoke. It's all I want to smoke, and I haven't developed a resistance to it yet. It
Hey,
satisfies
Dave,
me.
Back out of sharing for a second, then reopen sharing and just select the photo. It's too small, unfortunately, the way that you're showing it.
But he's got to have the
Close out your
photos.
share, and then reopen your share, but just open the photo you want to select, and then select that photo when you reopen the screen, when you do share again.
Yeah,
Like
if you
that?
open
After you
photos,
close it out.
if you open what Etienne is saying is true, but if you open one photo out of that messenger, you're only going to have one photo shared, and you're going to have to stop sharing and start sharing each time you open a photo. But if you put all the photos into the photo app and you open the photo app and then you share that, then you can click on the photos and go through them, and it'll stay shared on the screen. Because these are amazing, man. I want to see these full screens so bad.
Yeah.
I don't want to show the kids on here.
Well, because the pearls are so small in the sense that they're hard to physically see.
Anyway, you got a shot of the pearls. You know what they look like. The smoke is my favorite. It's all I want to smoke if I have a choice. And I found it when I was back in the best tie sticks I ever smoked. I used to take apart. I was a weed nerd from back in the 60s. I would take apart tie sticks and like look at them under a scope and dissect them all out. And I'd find male flowers, and I found a couple of seeds and this twiggy, not exactly budular looking smoke. The buds were just little tufts of flowers, just like the pearls, kind of. And that seemed to be the best smoke I ever had. That and this Colombian that had real tiny little buds. Gold Colombian. And so ever since then, I've been looking for that type of smoke. That quality and that type of high. And the pearls, the Destroyer is a 50% Thai, 25% Mexican, 25% Colombian. And it came out just, it doesn't have the exact flavor, but it has that same feeling of floating and weightlessness and otherworldliness. And it just makes everything seem like it's real good, real perfect. So that's that's my best smoke that I've grown in 57 years of growing and smoking.
Dude, I just love that
daily.
there's young people
And-
watching right now going, this old guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Look at that fucking weed. It's not even fucking. And literally everything you're saying is the truth. It's like prohibition hurt narrow leaf drug cultivars, long flowering cultivars more than anything because of that how fast can I get mentality. And I look at stuff like this and I'm just like, oh my God, I want to have it so bad. I did luckily get to make some sativa hash yesterday when I was at my facility here in Quebec. And this is called Cuban Links. Unfortunately, because this is Quebec hash, Quebec has a rule that you can't make the hash more than 30% THC. And then obviously, you know, there's so you have to kind of like either put in some CBD or something else. But the smell of this hash is so old school. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Well, they don't do it. We don't have the same language trickery that you guys have down in the U.S. for your farm bill. But welcome, Dr. Mark. We've got some wonderful guests today sharing, as you can see, some pretty incredible things. I mean, listen.
So
wish
Marcus,
every day
there's
that
2.5
Sam was
hours
here, but
between us. I wish I was up there, man. I wish I was right next to you, buddy.
Hey, if you can stop sharing your screen, we'll go
So-
back and just to all of us, because right now everyone just sees your Zoom screen on YouTube right now.
How do we do that?
Oh, you just stop sharing. There's a button that says stop sharing, and then we'll go back. It'll go back to us. And if you want to share at any point in time, again, if you get like photos organized and stuff, at any time, you guys are good to go. I must have pinned you though, because every time I put it on.
Yeah, I put together a whole album of like 85 photos that I think as we're talking, I'll try and, you know.
Oh, that'd be
figure
great,
out how to
dude.
get in there.
I'd love to.
What if I send them to you?
You could try to send me 85 photos. I'm on a pretty like 8-9-year-old laptop and it is glitching out. I mean, for instance, right now, and I don't know if it's doing it on YouTube, because I can't even fit two screens on my screen simultaneously. So I don't even know that YouTube's still on, to be honest. Might have stopped. I'm gonna have to reset that.
No, it's fine. You're going fine. Everything's fine. You're
Awesome.
fine. They're fine.
I kind of figured I got to
It's
go
a
buy a new
beautiful
laptop.
Sunday.
This
It's
is
on.
bad. This is bad. Perfect. I got
It's
like
on.
3 open and they're
There
all
you go.
blank on my screen. So there we go. And now you're talking, so it's good. It was stuck on them for a while, so I was a little worried, but I think it was just glitchy with the sharing. Yeah, if you want to send me those pictures, you could probably do it through WeTransfer, where it won't shrink the pictures, and as long as those 85 pictures are under 2 gigs, you can do it for free at WeTransfer.com. And you can send them to my email at bcbubbleman@icloud.com. I'll put it in the chat here. The computer screen is so small on this screen, I literally have to move the Zoom box around to access. Sometimes I have to open it up because the share button, the react button, the host tools, they all disappear when the box goes smaller. And I'm dabbed up pretty good on this masterpiece. So shout out to these guys for fucking making the nice rosin. All right, so yeah, send those pictures over because I'd love to look at them closer. And it's very nice to see cannabis that looks so unique. I can only imagine, I kind of feel that, the connoisseurness, the specialness of cannabis is lost to the new school smoker, the soccer mom, and I'm just going to do an emulsified beverage and a gummy and a this and a that. And although that the hash community for a long time, the dabbing community in particular, have been the ones holding the torch of like, having these conversations about aromatic volatile compounds, etc. I think that the haze group of people, the hazers, as I call them, are really doing a great service for the novelty and the connoisseurness of cannabis because it's special. And the way that the layman can learn that it's special is that This took 3 times the amount of time to grow. Okay, you might not understand this. That cannabis that you've been buying over there, that is not what we have over here. These are not the same things. They're very, 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 very different. And of course, you know, a lot of us have this very unique perception of these compounds that don't seem to give us like heart attacks and anxiety induced experiences, but you see it giving other people that. And that's specifically why some of those people aren't fans. I love when I'm talking about something and I'm making a good point, and then I see Archive try to come into the room, because Archive will only ever come into Hash Church when he has shit to say and share. He's got shit to say and share right now because we're talking about hazes and he's coming into the room. So welcome, Fletch. Just talking about hazes, talking about how the people who go out of their way to grow these narrow leaf drug cultivars, to me, are doing a great service to the cannabis community. You know, these novel, perfumey flavors are so incredibly unique and diverse. And with hazes, personally, and I don't know where all you sit, of course, I love the high and I love the flavor and I love the taste, but I think I love the smell in the room 10 seconds after I exhale more than anything. That's probably one of my favorite parts of smoking hazes, the smell of it in the air.
Well, it's a smell, but it's a unique smell because you can tell automatically, you know, compared to everything else you've been smoking. And then once you actually try it, it's one of those instant realizations. Oh, I get it. But if you've just been pumping out 6 to 8 week varietals, and then you hear that something like that takes 12 weeks, you know, people get really afraid. And I think people like you, Anthony, and your son, mad respect, because you're carrying on a tradition of high grade cannabis that the majority of people don't even know exists, much less why it exists or why it's so special. And until they try it, it's kind of just like talking, right? Because people just don't get it. They've all tried cannabis, but once you've tried real and true haze, then I think your brain, everything, your chemistry clicks, and everybody has foregone these, unfortunately, due to wanting a quicker time. Prohibition, of course, for people who are watching, it forced a lot of people indoors, and indoors, you're talking about just simple economics, right? 6 to 8 week varieties, looking at electricity, especially in the old days, those HPSs, which were, you know, electricity hogs, you know, completely sucked up that bandwidth, and it made it financially impossible, unfortunately, to have the hazes and these long flowering phenotypes that unfortunately got lost along the way. And thankfully, there's places in Amsterdam like Katsu, right, which cater to the hazes so that other connoisseurs could see that it does exist and why. Because when you also grow these cannabis, as Anthony and them have shown, it's not a very huge yielder, right? And that's another thing that I think is missing the conversation, is that people are going for yield, not just for that 6 to 8 week varietal indoor. They want something that's going to be big and sexy. When they see something, they would think that's larfy and that's not necessarily treated right or grown correctly. And that's part of the ignorance that has to be overcome, right?
Oh my God, well said, Etienne. It's just so accurate. I'll tell you, man, like when I got arrested with the kilos at the roadblock with the Compassion Club in 98, and they put me in jail for the night, and it sucked, you know, I was in jail and bummed out. I could hear all the cops like, wow, I've never smelt the jail like this before, because they were opening all the cannabis they caught from me. And it was super bummer day. And I remember being let go the next day when Conroy came and got me released. And I got in my car. It was a little shitty Audi. And I used to smoke a lot of joints back then. And my Audi was completely full. The ashtray was completely full of roaches. And so back then I was so stressed out. I was like, let's just have a quick roach here. And I ended up fucking pulling a fat one out of the out of the ashtray, and I'll never forget lighting it and puffing it and going to myself, because no one else was in the car, going, it's the haze. And it completely shifted. I mean, dude, I just had cash and beautiful cannabis. Like I had been collecting cannabis that whole day. Like I had gone through a couple 100 pounds, but I had dropped it all off where it needed to go. These 16 pounds that I had were like hand-picked special for the BC Compassion Club. These were for patients, and they took it. So I was so fucking bummed out about that, and getting arrested and charged and put in jail, and, you know, driving home and hitting that haze was just like, man, you know what? That's all good. It's going to be okay. That was beautiful. Whatever you just showed there was, that was insane. I need to grow some weed like that. In fact, I need to grow weed like that, and I need to put my Skunkman Sam ashes in weed like that. That is what I need to do. Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. It's like, what is that, in 2 weeks? It's like, no, that's 16 weeks in.
Can't hear it good.
You guys can't hear me?
So I figured out how to show some photos.
Beautiful.
I'm going to do it in the other room, and I'll let Tony maybe explain a little bit, because I think he knows what's going on in the photos. So
Sure.
Yeah, Tony, in the sense, when did you originally find this, and why did you make it, you know, your work?
I just, you know, I got in with a crowd early on in the 60s that used to get really good weed. I knew a guy that had a sailboat, used to go down to Mexico and fill it up and bring it back. And I'd always get to grade these buds. And so I just, you know, really liked long flowering varieties from the get-go. And I didn't have anything other than hash back in the day that was indica. I didn't have any indica seeds. So all I was growing down on the river and in guerrilla grows and stuff was sativas, narrow leaf, long flowering varieties. And you know, I'd get some to finish. Some Mexicans would finish, and then we would try to cross Colombians with Mexicans to try to get them to shorten the flower time. And I knew back then that the point was to get the shorter flowering time so you could turn over the crops, and get one back then it was get one in at one time per year. And then when I went to Humboldt, I moved to Humboldt in the 70s. In 79, the neighbor came down from up the hill and said, hey, this friend of mine went to Afghanistan and picked up some seeds. He goes, you got to try them out and grow them. So I grew them, and they were like 4-foot tall plants, big, thick, sticky buds that were super dank. And they finished in plenty of time in Humboldt, where the first year I grew in Humboldt, I was growing narrow leaf, and it was all very small buds, hardly got anything, and it didn't finish in time. So I started growing indicas, and from that point on, I knew that the market was going to be all indica because it finished real quick. It made big, fat, juicy buds, and everybody loved them.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
First of all, I just have to say the picture was it Dave?
Box.
Was it Dave in the picture of the room holding the box with flowers in it and flowers all around him? Okay, that picture is epic, first of all. Like, that is reminiscent of the old school photo of Neville in the fucking vault with the hash. That is an unbelievable photo. So is that monster plant that you just pulled up that looked like a Mullumbimby Madness or something. It looked like it was 20 feet wide, or maybe it was 2 or 3 plants. That was
Bubba Kush crossed with original haze.
Jesus Christ. Bubba. And where are you growing this? This is down in Cali?
So this is in Mendocino. This is in Mendocino County. Yeah. And those outdoor plants are in my buddy's garden, same spot. They got absolutely massive last year. Yeah, and then that picture with those boxes, man, as soon as my brother-in-law took that, I was just like, I think we all have the same, like it had the same effect that you're describing right now. You know, looks like it could be back in the 70s somewhere in a different country.
Yeah, it's epic, dude.
But for me, I now get the vibe that like this type of herb has. It kind of takes me back to a place that I've never even existed before, you know, just because of the look and the nostalgia of it. I think it's just crazy to me. You know, I get super high in this really awesome way, and I totally understand now after what has it been 13 years he's been telling me this when the first time I smoked with him, you know.
I converted him over to my religion.
Hell yeah,
And
you did.
you know, it's like I mean, to me, it's all good, just different. I've always said that ever since I started smoking. And there's a place for indicas too, but these long flowering varieties just have a specialness about them that you don't find in the short flowering ones. And
No.
I've always figured that nature never wastes a move. Everything is for a reason. And if it for a long time it's doing something we don't understand yet, that you know, it's maturing trichomes. I believe there's like layers of trichomes on it. Mature. When I looked at those tie sticks back in the day, I saw a lot of amber trichomes. There was a lot of different trichomes. There was clear, cloudy, and amber. And that's
Yep.
what these have, is they, over the longer period, you get flushes of trichome growth on the branches, on the leaves, on the calyxes, and the heads just get fatter and fatter. And when you get them right, they get fat like that. They get like salmon eggs. They look like they have a seed in them, but they don't. You'd swear that the thing was full of seeds, but there's no seeds in it. So the one thing about them is they hermy. And I've always gone against conventional wisdom and not been afraid of Hermes. And the reason for that is when I was taking those tie sticks apart, I would see male flower or I would see a seed, and I'd know that they were, they were Hermes plants. And so I was never afraid of Hermes. And the other thing was the best Colombian weed I ever smoked. A pound of gold Colombian that I swear it had to be wacky weed because it was so potent and so powerful that it felt like you were injecting it into your body. You could feel it when you took a hit go from your lungs out to your extremities, rushing through your fingers. And it felt like you were on a magic carpet when you were on that high. And I just used to love that weed, and it was full of seeds. I never saw weed that had so many seeds in it. Each little tiny bud had like 20 seeds in it. And that was the best weed I ever smoked. That and the Thai. There was, you know, good Jamaican, good Mexican, you know, all kinds of Mexicans. But that Colombian and that Thai was the stuff that I wanted to look for the rest of my life. And that's what I've been doing, is looking for plants that have that kind of quality. And I think I found it in the pearls. And it's totally against conventional wisdom because it's not buds. It's just loose, floofy, you know, calyxes. But it's
Thank
got a
you for
beauty
your
of its own,
service.
and it's special in its own way.
Right.
So this is a pearls outdoor plant. And you guys are talking about yield. And this is something that I still don't understand. This was a 5-pound plant. All right. And it's a little subjective because there is, you know, some stem in there, but the stem weight is very minimal and it's absolutely covered in trichomes. And my buddy was like, hey, you know, I got 5 pounds off this thing. And I was just like, the scale has got to be broken, you know? And sure enough, there's 5 pounds in there. And
What do they
I don't know
test
what
at?
it is about it, but they do hold some weight to them somehow.
What
The
do
other
they
thing
test at
is
when you have
when
them
you're
tested?
smoking this kind of weed, you don't roll big fat honker joints. You roll pinners. It's sipping weed. You sip it slowly and enjoy every hit. And you always have a roach clip and you always smoke it to the very bottom. It's that good. You don't want to waste anything. It's like the Thai sticks back in the day, $8 for a stick. You made sure you got everything off of that stick before you were finished with it.
What do they test
And
at?
it's the same with tools. I say, I have a saying, every calyx is sacred.
Okay.
The chemist deeply wants to know what is the percentage of cannabinoids that it tests at.
Not just me, that everyone
it's
wants to
gonna
know
get
that.
sent. We've never tested it. It's gonna get sent off in the next month. Another thing about these longer flowering varieties that I've learned from Tony is that the curing and aging of it and how that affects the high and the flavor and all that. So we've been talking a lot about like, when is peak? Like when is it at its best? And also for extracts, if you're harvesting at, a specific day and those don't ever get a chance to like cure or age or change, there could be a difference, in something that was made out of fresh material versus something that had been like cured for a year. So hopefully in the next month, we'll have some test results and we'll know what's in there. But as of right now, don't really know.
We never
Good
felt the need.
Yeah. Well, it's always
To test
fun.
it.
It's always fun to see, sometimes I have a little Valenvera's NIR unit and I was making hash in the lab the other day and they had all their sifts that they gave to me that were all tested. But I was like, oh, I'm going to test them anyway and validate their tests, see how accurate this machine is to those labs or vice versa. And then, when I would, do different processes to the resin, I would test it again, like if I was decarbing resin or whatever. And it's just kind of like, I find it interesting in regard, like, I'll tell you, if I ever came to where you guys are at and I had my little hand testing unit, I would want to test everything because it's the data resolution just it opens things up that are I don't know why I've always been interested in that aspect of it because I also sit on the other side of the fence where I'm like, yes, every calyx is sacred. Yes, brother, I'm with you. Like, we never needed to fucking test it. Yes, I totally understand. I'm sitting with you in that as well. But then I kind of sit over here a little bit and I'm like, wow, it'd be kind of cool to see, like I'm thinking to me, the narrow leaf drug cultivars, what they have preserved are novel aromatic volatile compounds that the how fast can I get it and how much can I get it prohibition based way of growing has decimated those flavor profiles the way they could be. Like if I take a haze joint and I haven't smoked a joint in a very long time, but I go to a concert and I light that haze joint up and in Vancouver where everyone has a purple kush joint burning and you light that haze joint up, dude, you get like 4 or 5 or 6 people that it's almost like running all the people through a set of bubble bags. And like the 6 that would get stuck in the 90 micron are the people that would come over to you and be like, hey man, what are you burning there? Like that smells really good. It's the ultimate way to filter amazing, like-minded frequency-based people that are like, well, just even talking to Dave the other day, I was like, I'm always nervous when it's like, oh, we should bring a new person on Hash Church. I'm like, okay, well, I got to talk to them. I got to make sure they're, of like-minded. And it was coming through Caleb, so I figured it would. But man, after talking to Dave for like half an hour, I was like, fuck, dude, I felt like you were a brother from another mother.
Hey, technically we all are, right?
That's it, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
I caught the wave, so to speak. And I feel like, it brings a certain vibe with it, because you're very clear and you're very uplifted and you're like ready to do things and hang out with people and make music and all this stuff and talk, and I think that's where like, I remember when I first started smoking, I'd get so high, I would just like ramble. But I feel like this is that weed that kind of has that like, oh, it just gets you stoned and giggly and you just want to, talk the whole time. That's pretty
Well,
much how it is. It just
there's
makes it feel
value
great.
in those
Anybody's
dialogues.
able to get to this level. Anybody like Dave, when I met him, he was a total indica head or short flowering varieties because that's what he was growing. He was growing as diesel. Anybody is able to, if they get intimate with a long flowering variety, that's what you got to do. You got to sit down, roll some pinners, smoke them, watch the birds, listen to some music, and see what you feel. That's how you get into it. If you're smoking indica or heavy indicas, couch lock types, it's hard to even understand or notice a quick hit or a couple of hits off of a long flowering variety. You got to sit down, I believe. You got to sit down and get intimate with it a little bit. And
They
that's
definitely
what,
have differences.
a lot of people do and come on to them.
Yeah, no, they definitely have their differences. There's I got lucky. I had an affinity. One of my earliest mentors, Ron Hickey, had a very, very pure haze that we flowered for 18 weeks. And I was very lucky to get turned on to that because, Ron had showed my entire city how to grow, everyone. He just wanted everyone to grow cannabis. But because Ron was so unconventional, and when it came to growing, he understood the lights and the system and the food and all of that, and it was like a science to him. But then he was this totally out of the box thinker that was like, let's just grow this 18-week flowering variety in a province where for sure, if you get caught, you're going to prison for 5 years. Ron got caught twice and did 11 years in a federal penitentiary with some very fucking dangerous, psychotic people. And so that was the reality of living north of North Dakota in Canada, in Manitoba, in the Bible Belt. If you fucked with cannabis, they would fuck you back very hard if you got caught. So, to be growing sativas in Manitoba in the late 80s, while he had already done a 5.5 to 6 year prison sentence. He had already done one of them, and he was about 2.5 to 3 years away from getting hit to doing another one, which the story was amazing. This is Manitoba for you. Ron got ratted on by a woman who pretended to have cancer, so he would give her cannabis. He didn't want to get paid for it, but she insisted because she needed to for the police. And why was she doing this? Well, because her double axe murderer husband needed to get yard time because he was locked 24 hours a day in the shoe. And so he wanted 1 hour a week of yard time. And Ron did that 1 hour a week of yard time with that double axe murderer for 6 years. And the guy was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. Like, I'm sorry. I know I needed yard time." Like, imagine having that conversation with a guy who murdered 2 people with an axe. So there are people in this cannabis journey that do things unconventionally, not because they make sense. And I've noticed in big cannabis that the thing that kills big cannabis or that kills cannabis and that takes away whatever's special is the CFO making decisions based on money instead of the growers and hash makers being like, okay, like, let's figure this out. They need to pay all the bills. So it's like, let's create some product SKUs that do that. And if you create enough of them that create enough revenue, then you can do all these special things. And in Canada, we do not have a lot of legal narrow leaf drug cultivars available in the market. And that really shows that prohibition mentality is still very much sticking. It went from the illegal growers, how much can I get and how fast can I get it, right into the corporate entities when they were like, well, how much can we get and how fast can we get it? It's like, holy fuck, I thought that was based on prison time, but no, it's based on money. It's based on margins and profit margins. And even though we might have thought it was based on jail and prohibition back then, it was really based on profit margins that were set by jail, right? The sentence of jail set your profit margin. If you had a big sentence in Louisiana, you're probably getting $5,000 a pound, but if you're flipping it over the border from BC to Washington State, well, maybe you'll get like $3,000 a pound. That was in the 90s.
Let the bean counters in. You let the bean counters in, and they'll ruin everything. I think one thing to keep in mind here, I have known Tony for like 20 years, and Tony has grown pretty much every clone only American variety you could probably imagine too over the last 25, 30 years through the forums and everything. So I think it's important that, not only Tony is your experience from the pre years, but you also were right in the middle of all the clone trade. And then, and you're still on this path and this journey to the product that you want.
I still remember the clones you gave me, that smelly it.
That was a good weed. But so how would you describe the smell and flavor profile of the pearls?
The pearls, there's a wide variety, because every once in a while you get a plant that throws a Hermy flower or two, and you get a batch of seeds. You grow that batch of seeds out, and you get a batch of different pearl plants with different flavor profiles, different flowering times, some determinate, some indeterminate. So I believe pearls is a whole new world of weed. It's you can keep growing pearls all the time if that's what you like. So I mean, that's what I like now. That's all I want to smoke is pearls. So I just keep growing more pearls, and I keep finding new seeds. Those bag seeds are new pearl plants, every single one of them.
So do you have a clone of it that you're propagating, or are you just popping those seeds, running them out?
Several. Yeah, we have several. One of them is 7-Up, like a sweet 7-Up lemony flavor. Not lemony like that fake lemon head flavor, like a real 7-Up-y flavor, sweet, with a sweet finish. Another one is like diesel-y, fuel-y. Some of them are like bathroom cleaner, furniture polish. You get the whole range of flavors with the destroyer pearls. With the African haze pearls, or the African haze, original haze pearls that we made, those, a lot of them have a kind of a original haze flavor, that kind of burnt metal, burnt gunpowder flavor, which I really like. And
the Malawi and the
smell
African haze is like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, like your Malawi original, or the MNL5, the Malawi NL5 haze that you had.
Yeah,
that's like
the same Malawi. That's the same Malawi that's in the African haze.
Right.
The exact same.
Right. Cloning. I remember. That I love that African haze 11, and we've been working with that crossed with an original haze, and getting a lot of really nice flavors out of that too. But they're more on the earthy, gunpowdery kind of metal flavor.
Yeah.
And a lot, you get tinges of the Malawi and the African, that woody flavor too.
Yeah,
which I really like.
That pure Malawi was super incensey. Like when you smoke it, it reeks. And the Malawi NL haze was like that as well.
I grew that Malawi and smoked it out of a chalice once, and people were getting so high they were like passing out. It was so strong.
It was interesting herb for sure. I mean, it definitely had its own thing to it. The 7-Up one, would you describe that somewhat like as the Schramm type of smell, or different?
Yeah, it doesn't have so much funk as the Schramm. It's more sweet.
Got it.
Candy, like leave that candy flavor in your mouth.
Interesting.
But you got to get it right. If it's not, if the conditions aren't right, if you're not feeding it right, you can get other flavors in there too.
Well, that's got to be one of the most difficult things with growing those types of plants, is crafting your nutrient regimen, or depending on how you're planning on feeding them, or compost, or whatever it may be. what have you found? In my experience with a lot of those long flowering varieties, they have very low nitrate needs over time. And so
Right.
you're constantly trying to balance this, not letting the plant turn yellow, but not allowing it to get any ram's horn leaves coming out the top. Have you guys found anything like bone meal or fish bone meal or something high in phosphorus, low in nitrate been good for flowering those types of plants?
So what I did this time was basically, I took I did a soil analysis. I took their recommendation and I cut it in half. And then this most recent time, and I relied a little bit more on the amendments than I did any like supplemental fertilizers. But what I did this time is I went quarter strength on the amendments. So that way I had it in there for the first portion, but I could throttle it up a little bit if I needed to and control it a little bit more. So I didn't get as much of that nitrogen in there in the beginning. So kind of tapering back the amendments so it's not there and available so much like after the first 3-4 weeks of flower, and then giving me a little bit more control to add it if I think it needs it. And then also, I think just the slow and steady, maybe doing some meals as opposed to some stuff that's really broken down and like fine and powdery. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just a little bit of amendments to kind of get them going and coast them through the first few weeks, and then be able to do some top dresses and some supplemental feedings, real light at like quarter strength on the feedings.
And are you
Yeah,
guys
I
in
always
the
mix my own
ground, or
soil.
are you in? Oops, sorry.
Sorry, what's that?
Are you guys in the ground in soil, or are you in pots?
We just switched last round. Up until last round, we were in pots, and then this round we're in beds on top of soil.
So it's you guys are still dialing in the ideal way to grow him, and I imagine the different phenotypes have different requirements and grow styles and preferences as well. I mean, I think a lot of people overlook how different two plants from the same family can grow, or that their requirements in terms of irrigation strategy or nutrients or otherwise.
Yeah, I'm seeing some that already want a little bit of nitrogen and some that don't need any at all. They could be like side by side. So
Yeah, I always found
that's always
in terms of organic stuff, fish bone meal, rock phosphate being good sources for long-term
Slow
phosphate
breakdown.
and potassium with very little nitrogen. Just as a something I noticed many
yeah, I
years
really
ago,
like
a lot more long flowering varieties. I mean,
like the
we still
rock
do. I
a
just
lot.
don't cater to them as much anymore.
Yeah, I always mixed my own soil. I reused Royal Gold cocoa that I add inputs from around that. I use live soil. I keep reusing it every year. I've used it for 10, 15 years, the same cocoa. And I start with nutrients, additives in my mix, mostly worm castings, and I make my own worm castings. And then I just do a real light liquid feed through the last like 8 weeks or so.
And
This guy can keep a plant
that was
clean
indoors
just by
well,
looking at it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing it indoor up in Humboldt.
Yeah.
And now in Mendo, it's up in a greenhouse.
Do you ever wonder?
Which makes it even
Just the different light sources can have a pretty, significant impact on your nutrient application and irrigation strategy as well. The plants definitely perform differently.
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
not to mention the March to December weather fluctuations also, which do this with everything.
Are you guys ever curious as to how those plants would express themselves in like places like Australia or, parts of Africa, parts of, Central and South America, Jamaica even? Like, I always wonder, because I do know I've seen people change their feed cycles. I've seen these rooms where only one thing gets changed. And for me, much like what Fletch just said, the biggest change I ever saw was when they just changed the light. Everything else, the food, the clone, the room, everything was exactly the same, except they just put different lights over these two plants. And they looked completely like different plants. They didn't look like the same cut anymore. But, do you guys feel that you can get the expressions that you could get anywhere in the world? Or are you of the mindset that these special genetics that you hold would and could potentially express themselves differently, grown in different parts of the world?
I think to a certain extent they would be different. The morphology, I think, would be the same. And pearls would still be pearls.
Yeah.
They might grow, there's just so many variables. I believe you can get it almost as good up here as you can in Colombia or Thailand, if you can match the conditions. And it's adapting and controlling the conditions, and especially in a greenhouse, to the point where you can match something that's comparable to Colombia at a high elevation, or Thailand. That's the best you can do. But yeah, it would be fun to grow them in Jamaica or Colombia or something. Yeah.
I even think of it as like, I'm kind of out of the mindset of thinking one's better than the other, as much as thinking, like the microbial, the mycorrhizosphere, there's like these unperceivable components of the plant that could be just expressing differently. So yes, the way we look at things, we might be like, oh, I like the taste of this one better or whatever. Well, it's like, that's subjective. I just want to know, how many different ways can we get this plant to express? Especially because what these plants have that are special to me, and I think to most of the people who love hazes, are those fucking novel, volatile organic compounds, those perfumes and incenses and just super unique flavors that even people who don't smoke cannabis walk into a room where a haze has been smoked and they'll be like, oh, like my wife is not pro cannabis by any means. She doesn't love cannabis the way I do. She doesn't smoke cannabis. She's super hypersensitive to it. Like 1 milligram gets her high, but she loves the smell of haze when she smells it in the air. And of course, she used to actually love, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but when the terpenoline seems to be too pure, that particular haze terpene, and I'm sure there's a lot more going on than just that. It seems to be what people connect to this anxiety. And Chimera, Ryan Lee was on here a couple months ago, and we were talking about sweet skunk, and he was saying, well, sweet skunk it's this beautiful haze. Its flowering is much shorter, I think 12 weeks or something, but it doesn't cause people anxiety. And Ryan suggested that it was because it has terpenoline dominant, but it has another dominant terpene, which is ocimene. And when you put those two together, you still get that kind of uppity language. Let's talk, let's do things, without the sort of like, oh, geez, like I'm really high. Like you've seen the sativa anxiety attack. I've seen it countless times. And I always feel bad for people that suffer from it. But you put that ocimene in there and all of a sudden you get that enjoyment without that sort of sharp edge at the end where people kind of are maybe starting to have a less fun of a time. Another thing I wanted to speak about in regards to sativas, and I've said this on Hash Church years ago, we've had in historical times, there have been, like alcohol, for instance, beer, this was, and pubs, and how you would go to the pub after work, and the conversations that those laborers would have after work drinking their beers would be conversations that would shape the world, right? These are the guys building the world and building the infrastructure of the world. And that happened with beer, and it happened with tea, and it happened with coffee. And it's been our turn for a while with cannabis. And even though they're federally legalizing cannabis and allowing cannabis here, there, and everywhere, what they're not allowing is for people to gather in spaces and consume cannabis and have those dialogues. And I also think the how fast can I get it and how much can I get prohibition mentality of smoking has limited. I mean, my wife for years was just like, so you just smoke weed with all your friends and then they turn to zombies? Because I have an incredibly high tolerance. I could smoke like 10 or 15, huge dabs, and my friends are just like kind of like this in the chair. And it's true that is those narrow or wide leaf drug cultivars that are producing those effects. And when you're allowed to gather and smoke sativas, and I think you're right. I mean, I used to smoke giant fatty 4 and 5 gram sativa joints, but pinners, they're sippers. I like that. It's a sipper, not a ripper. Right? You just want to sip on that little pinner and taste all those flavors. They're so volatile and rare and unique. I love them. I am a fan.
Yeah.
Years ago, I met Paul the Madman.
It's a combination of both.
Of what?
It's the flavor and the feeling. When you get the one or the other alone, it's never the same as when you get them both. When you get them both, you're in nirvana.
Yeah.
The THC is like voltage to me. It's like the rush, the punch. The rest of it is where the goodness is. And there's a lot of it that we have not discovered yet. For sure. Right? I mean, everybody that thinks they know what terpene does what.
They don't.
We're talking, it's like you can't quantify it yet.
It can't be perceived. There's too much that's imperceivable. And the reason why we want to test is to sort of perceive more and more. We're like, let's go deeper in this and pull it apart. If we can understand, for instance, we just recently had the guys from Abstract, Dr. Mark was in on that one, a bunch of great conversations. It was all about volatile organic compounds. Nick Ziegler really was the first one to come on Hash Church and break out of the terpene conversation, which of course, our wonderful friend and dear mentor, Skunkman Sam, was one of the first people to really do the terpene experiment in early 2000 at his apartment in Amsterdam and be like smoking THCA and then smoking THCA with like individual terpenes. He wanted to show this modulating effect. He started the whole conversation, and Dr. Ethan Russo did his and started the entourage. And there was Ed Rosenthal went and did it, and he wrote the article on the mango myrcene thing. So there was a little bit of like misinformation the way it went, and then we called it terpenes for like 10 years straight. Everyone just called it terpenes. And then Nick Ziegler came on Hash Church and he said, I was an extractor at Yakima Chief Hops Company in Washington. And they had this huge Thor CO2, insane, like $10 million extractor that did like 4,000 pounds an hour or something. And the company was really into R&D and really into research, and they were able to have this incredible analytical team that found 1,400 different long-chain sulfur compounds, i.e. thiols and thiolates, present in hops. And Nick came on Hash Church and was like, listen, these are a lot of these are present in cannabis. When you smell garlic, like that is not a terpene, it's a thiol. And he sort of started opening our minds to these conversations. Well, we had Abstracts on, and that conversation got even further blown up. So what I'm saying is, we want to know what we have. When you have these special things and it's special because you're like the savant that has this fucking incredible relationship with the plant, well, it's your duty for the rest of mankind to figure out what it is and preserve it, because you have those special powers, not the rest of the world. There's rare anomaly people who have these relationships that become intimate. They're able to, maybe perceive more of what's going on than the regular Joe. And I had this conversation with Jolly Roger about Skittles because it wins every fucking contest it enters. And he actually made the suggestion. He's like, because we all have different blind spots in our sensory science. We all don't perceive things the same. Like it's why some people love cilantro and some people think it's soap, because we perceive differently. And that's a very base way of explaining it. But when you think of just how differently we can perceive things and how we have holes of things we can't perceive and how we have super hypersensitive areas where we over perceive, those affect and create a very unique perception for us individually. And then we try to compare it with one another and it doesn't always line up. because we don't know what your sensitivities are and what. So Nick opened this conversation up to us on Hash Church. And since he did, we've been talking a lot more about esters and thiols and thiolates. And I'm of the belief that these narrow leaf drug cultivars hold opportunity of unique, amazing novelty in the aromatic volatile compound category. That was a mouthful, so I'm going to stop there. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
I agree.
I like it.
I
I wish I had said your part.
A lot of indescribable flavors and smells. Like people tell you, you know, what does it taste like? What does it smell like? It's like, man, you could go on for hours trying to figure that one out, because there's some that you just, it's like a depth. It's almost like the closest thing I can come to something like haze is like penetrating oil. You have that flavor that starts here and goes on forever in a way that, you know, it dissipates as it goes, but it's like in your mouth and it's going off, and every hit refreshes it, and you just want it to stay there and never go away.
Listen, my wife doesn't even have an affinity in any way, shape, or form for cannabis. But when we had my son and we named him Tosh, and we were trying to come up with a middle name, she was like, why don't we name him Hayes? And I was just like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you would let me name him Hayes? And she's like, I'm suggesting that we name him Hayes. And I'm like, why? And she looks at me and she goes, because you were always so excited about the haze. It's the haze. She's like, starts imitating me. She's like, you love the haze. Why don't we make your son a Hayes? And then I was like, Tosh Hayes. I'm like, if that ain't a cannabis cultivar waiting to happen one day, which is hilarious because my son doesn't puff at all in any way, shape, or form, has no relationship with cannabis at 21 years old at all. But that's okay. I love the novelty of that. You know what I mean? Even that's kind of just, you know, the novelty is where you find authenticity. And, you know, lately at this point in time in my life, that's what I'm looking for more than anything is authenticity, which is why I needed you to be on Hash Church when I saw the picture on his shirt. When I saw that shirt, I was like, oh, that's authentic. That's not like some like marketing agent in New York who's like, okay, well, we're going to make this sort of Hunter S. Thompson character. And he's going to be like it's like, no, dude, that's authentic. That's you.
Dude, this logo came from many, many smoke sessions and many, many back and forths. And yeah, it was a fun progression, you know, but it was basically,
it's a Halloween picture of me and my daughter when she was like 8 years old, and I was dressed up like Haile Selassie, and
nice.
So I had my grandfather's Africa campaign hat on, and yeah, it's probably from like back in the 80s,
Emperor
Yeah.
Selassie.
mid-80s.
That's awesome.
It was on my refrigerator.
You said something earlier about getting things to express. And I've always had this idea that it would be cool to give, say, 100 people the same cut. They take it to their property and grow it. You collect the data, you know, elevation, you know, that's where like, it's more like growing grapes. And you start to understand like, okay, cool. It grows the best here. And then instead of everybody competing with the same Skittles against everybody, the dude that has the best Skittles wins. He grows that. And then somebody else grows what expresses the best for everybody at their property. And so basically when you're coming forward, you got the best expression of it. And then you can also see, well, this is where it grows the best. So if you're going to grow this type of variety, you know, or you're going to be in this region, grow these types of varieties, and you're going to have the best luck from a pest and disease standpoint. Collect that data and kind of help people be able to come to market with their best foot forward. Let's just say.
Well, what that is bending the knee to the terroir instead of getting the terroir to bend the knee to you, right? And you see it in these corporate cannabis companies. The corporate cannabis companies want the cultivars and the hash to bend the knee to them. but you have to bend your knee to those cultivars and to that hash. I was just explaining this to my new partners here in Quebec, that we have to listen to the hash. And when we make the hash, it needs to go into the product that it is telling us it belongs in. We can't shoehorn it into into a product that it doesn't belong to. And they're awesome because they understand that, and that's why they're one of a very few successful cannabis companies in Canada right now, because they bend the knee to the cultivar and to the hash instead of the other way around.
Yeah, and that's really difficult to do, Marcus. Like, from a commercial point of view, most of these people have a set schedule. To be out of that schedule is detrimental, right? To so many things. So
well, listen, they're living in La La Land. They are trying to stabilize something that cannot be stabilized.
100%. And and what you brought up is so real. Like, it's like why clone only varieties it's a false reality for most people. You're not going to have the same environments, grow to grow. It's just the reality of it. And that's where self-reflection really comes in. Just because you have a clone doesn't mean you should be growing that clone. I think it's really interesting to me that people get so stuck in this idea of elite. Well, go pop 1,000 seeds. You'll probably find a couple hundred elite different, expressions there that you could, quarantine yourself and figure out what works for your methods. Because it's so individual, like we really distill this thing down, but there's so much nuance. It's kind of ridiculous. We often forget that, and especially with long growing varietals, like long flowering times, they need totally different feeding schedules and different timings, and different watering, is required as well. So, a lot of this people try to adapt in ways that, you have to be very specifically for, long variety, narrow-leaf varietals in general. They just require different things. So it's fascinating to me from an agronomy point of view that we tend to kind of shoehorn stuff, to your point, Marcus. It's just not conducive to the actual understanding of the varietals themselves.
It's the bean counter. The bean counter comes in with the shoehorn, bro. He's like, listen, I know you got a big foot, but we're going to have to fit it into this size 4. Don't worry, it'll be painless. And then while they're doing that, you got HR in the room going,
are the shoehorn.
Yeah, BHO and distillate. Yeah, you're not, that's definitely.
Yeah, well, no, everything goes to that, right? And it's like, I don't know. I can't wait for the day where we start, breeding enough into narrow leaf to pull some of the traits that are desirable, while allowing those traits to kind of move forward with longer capitate stalks and things that are able to be usable in methods like water hash. It's oftentimes that for instance, I'm in California now. 710 Labs gave me a beautiful care package, and they had this one varietal called chocolate oranges, which to me tasted like Rosetta Stone or any of this like haze forward stuff. And it was so great that I texted Brad and I was like, this needs to be in a solventless cart so more people have accessibility to understand what what these flavor notes are, because most people are not going to buy water hash. And I think that's, getting accessibility to people is another thing, because, you know how this kind of works in terms of flavor. People get stuck in their ways, and then the internet drives like what they're after.
Oh, even worse. People have blasted out their own senses with fucking cigarettes and alcohol to the point that they can't perceive most notes. Everything just smells like weed to them. So when you spray it with like botanical terpenes that smell like a pineapple, and they can go, oh, that's a pineapple. They're all excited that they're now like a sommelier perceiving cannabis on this higher elevated level. And that is actually the truth of the matter. And I don't care what city you're living in, if you go to the local dispensary, I can promise you the number one selling pre-rolled joint is botanical terpenes, floor sweepings, and distillate, numero uno. So we don't need to be that. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather live in the upside down with fucking Tony and Dave there. And I don't need the yields. I don't need I haven't grown a haze in so long, and I've got Skunkman Sam's ashes at home, and I decided a while ago these are going into hazes. I'm not putting these ashes into skunk number one. They're going into hazes. And I personally know that haze was his favorite. That was the one he loved. It's not like he didn't love skunk number one, but haze was his favorite. He said it many times on Hash Church. It's definitely my favorite. It's not economically viable, and that is the problem with it within the shoehorn system that exists today. Now, Sam certainly believed it could be. He was like, I could grow it in fields. I could grow super high quality haze in fields. We were, in fact, my one regret in life is that I had an idea with Sam probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago. We would go to Jamaica. We both loved Jamaica, and we wanted to do a Jamaican project. He had a bag of a kilo or more, maybe five. I don't know what it was. It was a half-pound bag, like full of haze crossed with haze seeds. They were they were part of his unique collection. They weren't just like in with all the other seeds. I don't think he ever sold those. But those seeds, we were going to plant like 100,000 of them on 20 acres in Jamaica. And the idea would be for him to walk through that 100,000 plants and pick 5 or 6 and breed the lion back into the Jamaican jungle, because he felt like the cats in the Jamaican jungle had turned into kittens. They were these little pathetic plants in the bogs in Jamaica. There were no more of these beautiful narrow leaf drug cultivars in Jamaica. By late 90s, they were dissipating and disappearing to the point of almost not existing. And by 2000, they were certainly gone. It's the blueberry skunk, it's the pineapple skunk, so all of these, I guess what you would call land races, which I always assumed were from India, because African people were not packing their bags when they got taken to go to Jamaica, but Indians were. Indians were indentured slaves. They packed their own bags, they paid for their own trips, they got on ships, and they went to fucking Jamaica for a better life. And when they got off the boat, you're over there. It's like, whoa, what's going on? And so they brought seeds and they brought things. I think most of those narrow leaf drug cultivars in Jamaica probably originated from Asia.
I've been to Jamaica a couple of times, and I remember seeing little villages of indentured Indians, separate from the rest of Jamaicans. And so I know that there's a heavy Indian population there. And I was there in the 80s, and I saw what was happening over there. The first time I went in 81, I could still find good narrow leaf.
Oh, yeah.
But by the time I went in 89, everything had changed. Cocaine was everywhere, and everybody was growing plants 2 feet tall that were crap, total crap.
Yeah, it's a bummer to see that happen, and it was also part of prohibition. So, there was a couple of things that worked against the Jamaicans. The prohibition of those large plants, it made it too easy to see from helicopter, or anyone could find it just walking through the jungle. So then they got to plant these like small little crops, and they don't get to do it right, like where you pull up in your truck and then you open up and then you plant. It's like more like, mountain guerrilla farming in Cali or British Columbia, where it's like they are hiking up mountains. They're getting as humanly far away from the police - army as they possibly can to grow these plants. And some of them, I met a guy who had planted like 2 acres of peanuts at the bottom of this mountain that he would then climb, and his grow was on top. And I was like, he's like, these are my peanuts. I'm like, oh, you grow peanuts? He's like, yeah, I have 2 acres. I'm like, oh, that must be a lot of work. He's like, it's a lot of work, because they're like this tall. So all of the work when he's planting, when he's harvesting, everything is done like backbreakingly bent over 1.5 feet from the ground. And I'm like, oh, wow, is this like a side business? He's like, no, it's like my front. And I'm like, your front? Like, what do you mean? He's like, it's like if the army catches me walking here or coming down, I just bring them to my peanut field. I tell them I'm a farmer and I bring them to my peanut field. I'm like, you're growing 2 fucking acres of peanuts to hide the fact that you're growing weed? I was like, oh, and he was harvesting it, drying the peanuts, cracking them open, cooking them on, like doing the whole process of actually the business. I was like, dude, that is a lot of fucking extra work to just grow some weed. I'll tell you, my Jamaican friends, when weed became decriminalized or legalized or whatever it is there, and they could drive their vehicle to the field and then get out and the field is just right there. That was the greatest thing, like from having to be a guerrilla farmer. And I don't know why it is, but yeah, those police and army guys were just really not good to the Jamaican citizens, particularly those ones growing cannabis. Like, it's like, dude, you're treating your own people like terribly. They're definitely afraid of them. You don't want to get fucked by the army.
You can't blame them for growing the quick plants. I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
The one thing that comes to mind is like with haze, like you could grow a half acre, an acre, and come out with some pretty good terps because of by design. Terpenoline is like you could really fuck it up and still have great terps, right? Now the challenge I think is all the other things. Like, is it, gonna be, for instance, is it healthy enough to make it through the season, but with minimal effort? But out of any of the varietals I've grown, I feel like haze, like you could beat it up and still come out pretty decently. Right. And that's because of the ability for the flower, from just the way the flower structure is itself, just thinking out loud with you guys, like I would bet if you worked long enough working with a haze varietal and bred it and found the right traits, you could do that. And I think that's where maybe Sam was in his mind, like, yeah, you can grow acres, because an equatorial line like that has the attributes and the ability to be pest resistant, disease resistant, deal with mold and mildew, unlike a lot of these other, like a low-lying indica or even a hybrid. Even some of these sativa leaners, like they don't have the ability because the flower structure is not airy enough,
Well, they didn't evolve
So I
for
think
that.
no, it didn't. That's the thing. Like like I'm just thinking like with everyone here, like it naturally evolved this way, naturally. And you were talking, I can't remember, he was talking about elevation. I mean, years ago, I got obsessed with the idea that like a plant would produce more narrow morphology as it went up in elevation. Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's just how it evolved. As you went up in elevation, where did we find all these narrow leaves? Well, we found them at elevation, most of them, right? And all the low-lying varietals, like all the indicas and even those hybrids, like those are mainly things that you found in valleys, right? Or the sativas were brought from the mountains into the valleys and grown, right?
Indicas were all high elevation desert. That's like
right.
Afghanistan.
Right, but like they weren't, everything's at elevation, but I'm talking like 12,000 feet,
That's the indicas for the most part are the ones from, what is it, 3,000 to 4,000 meters.
Right.
The typical growing range for that. And then your low-lying varieties are the narrow leaves.
So I have it completely backwards.
Like India and Philippines and Indonesia and Thailand. Those are all your equatorial varieties. And those are all generally lower elevation.
Interesting. Interesting. So
Afghanistan and Pakistan and everything, all those high desert with short seasons.
So wider leaves to block the light and help them deal with UV. Is that?
I think the wider leaves is that they're more efficient at trapping light energy, right? So they're at a higher latitude, right? So they receive shorter seasons with less light. So they need a wider leaf to be able to deal with that. And then, they have a shorter flowering time because they need to finish before the season. I mean, if you're just talking outdoor plants in general.
Yep.
The if your season allows for it, the majority of sativa and sativa hybrids perform better outdoors. It's just like Dave said, the pearls will yield 5 pounds on an outdoor plant, right?
True. That's true. You're not wrong about that at all.
Like that's not an issue. I mean,
No.
some of the better, indica producing varieties in Northern California would be like Blockhead or GDP or stuff that people that are indica dominant that people grew a lot of in California outdoor. And to get one of those plants to 5 pounds is actually pretty tough. They're more like three if you really get them big, 3 to 4. Um, but like sour diesel maybe isn't a sativa, but like a big sour plant will yield 5 pounds. There's like those bigger, taller varieties generally grow better, produce better, and appear to be more resilient. I mean, just to answer one of Marcus's things earlier as well, is you were talking about the different phenotypes and that you're going to see it in different locations, and we've sent most of these clones to a lot of different places and seen them grown at a lot of different elevations, different latitudes, everywhere from Spain to Hawaii at 3,000 to 4,000 feet and down at the ocean level. I've seen the same clones grown at all those varieties, and you see just as much phenotypical variation from all that as you would messing with all your indoor variables. Um, and but the thing that determines the quality more than anything generally is just the consistency of the environment. Like how good is the environment? Um, the latitude, like you definitely see differences in the plant, but if they're grown really well and the environment's really good, the weed's going to be really similar to how good it was at the other place that had great weather and great environment and finished fully and everything else. You'll definitely be like, oh yeah, because like I have my varieties that are up here and I've seen them grown in Northern California and Oregon, and then grown indoor countless times by us. And then I've seen them grown in Hawaii at 2,500 feet elevation and at 3,500 feet elevation. And, um,
And you
I
feel
know,
like the quality is like,
I know Moonbo 112 when I see it in both places. It's not that different.
right. That's an interesting take on that. Because I was going to ask you, like, out of the stuff you've bred, Fletch, like, what is more out of all the things you've bred? What's the most versatile? Is it Moonbow or is it another Alcrot Dosido? Like when
I
you
mean,
give it
like
when you
for
give
an
it out.
outdoor plant, the Hawaiian lemons I made, which is that land, the like old Hana strain crossed with
Yep.
Skittles, and then that crossed with the Planet Purple Male.
Nice.
But like, I think I showed you the hash and the flower of it, maybe.
Yeah, you did. You showed me some like
Yeah,
really,
that thing
really
crushes. It
interesting
gets
stuff.
like 12 feet outside. Like everything else will be 6 feet, and that thing's 12 feet. And this grown, everything being equal, clones taken at the same time, everything else, um, and yeah. So, but it's like it's never different enough, even out there, that that it looks different than even my indoor. It's like, nope, that's it for sure. It's not even a question. Because those are the same clones. Now, once you start popping stuff from seed and everything, you're gonna see a lot more variation every time you're popping something and seeing what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm out in California right now.
The reason why I asked about testing earlier, and again, it's just remarkable plant structures, right? Those little pearls, because it just looks very different than any other thing I've seen, is that um, THC content, just as a measurable, right, as a yardstick, is directly correlated to trichome density, right? And so I think it was early on, Anthony, you had made the description about, oh man, look how frosty all these pearls are, right? So we all know what that frost means, right? Those are just little trichomes. And so yeah, so the more THC, more measurable THC, the more trichomes you have, right? And so you talk about like that 5 pound yield you were talking about before, yeah, like if you're extracting it and you're making oil out of it, right? There's direct correlation to trichome density to your oil yields and your hash yields, right? Because you're only going to extract what the plant is producing. But yeah, it'd be interesting also to push back on my favorite misconception about cannabis is that it's all about the THC level, right? Because it probably isn't, Anthony, right? I mean, in your experience, I love the way that you described I'm about as old as you, I think. I think we're about the same age. So I remember smoking weed in the 70s that was just that Colombian gold, or that Acapulco gold, that Colombian, just really, really rich and flavorful, and yeah, very haze-like. I remember thinking that I grew up with a grandfather who smoked cigars, and I remember like the essence of the cigar still being in the room right after he left. Kind of like what Marcus was talking about how his wife responds to the essence of haze, right? That there's kind of like this after lingering thing that kind of sticks around in the room, right? You can't, it's like no other kind of weed. But again, just going back to trichome density, what that also relates to is how much terps you're going to get out, right? Because terps are made in trichome. Obviously, I mean, again, these oil profiles are just going to be very, very like, if I've seen some of the hazes, yeah, this high terpinolene, and I think there's high sesquis in there. I think the osmine that Marcus was talking about is also in there. And Marcus, what was the other one? The Celine Dion. The
No, that's a rare
Celine
one.
Diene, right?
Selena
Right. That's
Diane.
the one that's in Whitethorn, right? That's the one
Yep.
that's in Whitethorn. But I think what's really cool, and obviously there's definitely, and it's so cool, Marcus, that you're talking about the abstracts discussions and with Nick. There's got to be some Tropicana sulfur notes in these hazes for sure. I mean, that's like kind of like that after lingering essence that you get in a room after, haze has been consumed. There's definitely something there. And again, I know there's no similarity to tobacco, but because I grew up with a cigar smoking grandfather, it just reminds me of that. For some reason, even though it has nothing to do with the smell of whatever he was smoking on back in the day, Dutch Master, Swisher Sweets, or whatever they were, some big fat cigar, some old Italian guy who smoked a big fat cigar, right? He would fill the room again with that essence of whatever he was smoking. And yeah, that's what haze reminds me of.
Hey Fletch, have you ever ran any of the mango haze from Shanti Baba? You ever popped like any of those?
His
Because
camera's off.
a lot of those even well, maybe you can hear me, but like a lot of those, just for the listeners, like I've popped hundreds of them. They all have, they're very high in osmine, and there's very little terpinolene in that line. So it smells like an incense or church, right? And I often wonder sometimes, if we talk about piff in New York a lot, if piff actually evolved out of that.
Well,
Um,
I think the thing to keep in mind with haze is that haze is a hybrid of multiple land race sativa varieties.
yep,
So depending on what you hybridize it with, you can get everything from the metallic, Malawi kind of side of it from
yep,
haze, and you can also get your straight jack,
yep,
terpinolene dominant, and you can get um I mean, and I could be wrong on this because I wasn't alive in the 70s. So I can't tell you what Thai is supposed to be like. All I can say
yeah,
is the varieties that I grew from seeds I collected 20 years ago, which Tony is familiar with a lot of the same varieties and probably can speak to, like you remember the C Red cut, Tony.
One?
The C Red, the Colombian Red.
Oh yeah.
That
I never got to grow that one.
you didn't grow that one. Well, that one was like that one reminded me of the dog shit, right? The dog shit clone,
For
which is
Pinoline.
another sativa dominant one. And like the Schramm, for example, right? It's 50% the Colombian gold.
Yeah.
Um, I just associate that with being the Colombian gold side of what the haze is to most people. The Thais that I've grown, the Cambodians that I've grown, even just like random stuff like the New Zealand kiwi seeds I grew, like all that kind of stuff, all had some resemblance. Even the Hawaiian stuff, it's all some.
yep,
People would call it haze depending on where they are and where those things came from. but it's not necessarily a singular smell and flavor. It's like a family of flavors, basically.
Did you ever
It
grow
Because
the
of the
mullen-bending?
variability that's existent
depends on
in
the
the haze that
lines.
went worldwide.
Yeah, I think
Depends
whoever
on the
just
person's line.
yeah, that's
Who grew it and their selections depends on what the flavor is going to be.
100.
There are several lines of haze. You know, Johnny Chicago's haze is going to be different than Sam Skunkman's haze because of and Tom Hill haze because of the selections that they did as they were growing them and the continuation of that line. I've grown those Colombian seeds that I talked highly about the pounds that I smoked back in the 70s. And you don't get the same flavors and from those pounds or from those buds because the conditions are different. In Colombia, in Thailand, you have different conditions, and that is the determining factor in the flavors that you get out of the finished product, I believe. If you grow it in a greenhouse in Mendo, it's going to taste different because the conditions are different. You get extreme heat, you get cool, you get just different summer temperatures. So if you grew that weed in the perfect conditions that it came from in Thailand, you're going to get a different expression than you would in a Mendo greenhouse in California. So the closer you can get it to the conditions that are prevalent in where it was grown in Thailand is going to determine the flavors and not only that, the weed from the 70s, like that Colombian and that Thai, was shipped and it took months to get here. So, and it was dried and cured differently than a lot of the ways that we do it here now. So you're going to get different flavors and different, there's just so many variables that you can't quantify that affect the flavors and not so much the potency. The potency, I think, is determined by the way it was grown and how it was dealt with. But the conditions that it was grown in determine the flavors and the effects to a certain extent. So in other words, if I grew Colombian seeds from the same weed that I smoked out of those Colombian pounds, it's not going to taste the same as, right? I mean,
Definitely.
those Colombian pounds back in the day, I used to say tasted like Ibarra chocolate, that Mexican chocolate with cinnamon and chocolate combination that just comes out in a really nice flavor in your mouth.
Mole, right?
You can't get that from a weed that you grew in Mendo because it's going to be grown in different conditions than it was after being shipped from Colombia.
Don't you think that has a lot to do with like the microbial makeup in the soil?
I'm sure that has, like I said, there's
I've been saying
immense
that for a
effects.
really long time because I got buddies that are in the wine industry. All right. And so he said there was this farm that had like a hog farm next to the grapes. And he could tell there was an influence from the hog farm into the grapes. And yeah, maybe that smell can get stuck onto the grapes. But I've always thought, what's the commonality? Like like maybe in Hawaii, you get this herb, and it's like, oh, it tastes kind of like mangoes, and it was grown next to mangoes, like a mango farm. Or we had a strain that tastes like coffee, and my buddy bred it in Hawaii next to a coffee plantation. What's similar? The soil. How far do those roots go? Who knows? But it's the microbials, it's the fungus in there, it's those roots that interexchange, and if they can go far enough, maybe they're picking up the same thing and kind of transferring it back and forth to each other.
It also the other thing that comes to
in
mind
the ground, I guess.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said it's got to be in the ground for that one.
Yeah, totally.
The one thing that comes to mind is Rick DeLisi. Like Rick, he came on the show and he talked about Colombian gold and how they over dried it before they sent it out, and it gave it that gold look, right? And to your point, talking about how every region and everyone's process is different. I would imagine that drying process that he chose or they chose to go through to get it that color affected everything that you're talking about in terms of
Colombian gold
flavor,
was not
effect.
gold because Colombian
Right.
gold was not gold because it was dried, over dried. The Colombian gold I'm talking about was orangey brown
Yeah.
with thin little gold leaves wrapped around it, like maybe two thin little gold leaves were wrapped around it. That was the only gold on it. The rest
Yeah.
of it was orangey brown. It looked like a hash ball, little
Yep.
tiny
Yeah.
hash balls.
Well, what this highlights to me is like, which is fascinating about your story is like, that's truth, right? You're telling truth, which is real truth. And Rick also has his truth, right? And he has his version of what that looks like to him. And there's microcosms, right? Like we all experience but we all have this general term that we use. So I find that really interesting because it's, I'd love to have him on again to explain that a little bit more, but I just thought it was so fascinating. And then now hearing you talk about it, and I've seen my own images of it. I'm too young to have smoked real Colombian gold, but I collect historical imagery and as much as I can to try to learn. It's such a big world, and there's so much, there's so much. It's just kind of awesome. But it's really interesting hearing you talk about that because it's like that's what I would expect it to be, right?
Here's how
Not
Colombian gold happened. Mexico was the main source of herb in the 60s. They started spraying paraquat. Everybody stopped buying Mexican weed. All of a sudden, Colombia weed started coming in, Jamaican and Colombian weed. And over the years, more and more, starting in 74, 75, it started coming in. That was the best. It was the original shipments that were the best. After that, it became so popular, everybody wanted gold Colombian weed. So
Right.
they started calling everything gold Colombian weed.
Got it.
Crappy weed that was grown anywhere that was over dried or whatever was passed as Colombian weed. Names don't mean anything.
Right.
People were calling everything Colombian just because it was what was going to sell.
Was it like that first two shipments that defined it for you, or like you first, like when you saw it the first time and then the second time, you're like, oh my gosh, like
That
this
set
is
the
just
bar,
like,
man. That was like the best Colombian I ever
cool.
smoked. And then it just went, by 79, I was already growing my Colombian and it wasn't flowering. So I wanted to move to Humboldt. I moved to Humboldt with a 1-month-old baby on raw land and camped out to grow weed. That was everything changed after that. And Colombian from like 78 or 79 on was slowly getting worse and worse until nobody wanted Colombian anymore. It's just like anything. It becomes popular, everybody starts calling everything they grow
right
whatever's popular, and then it goes downhill and nobody wants it anymore.
Which is what you can do. Which is what you can do when you don't have the chemovaric makeup of what the name is, because the name is just a fucking name. But what is it? It's what the molecules say it is. So that's why you want to test it.
It's not even the chemovar. It's the ability of the grower to get it to come
100%.
out right.
100%. But when he does get it to come out right, you want a footprint of that. You want a fingerprint. When it comes out right, you want to get a snapshot of that and be like, this is it right here. And this is the bar for anything you want to put that name on.
But it's not the cut.
Right.
Everybody thinks it's just having the cut, but it's not having the cut.
Yeah.
That 1-month-old baby was not anywhere near the grow, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Well, there's the clone that started the name, and then there's everything that came after it, and it's it's happened many times. There's like you're saying with Colombian Gold, it was those first batches that were brought in quick and fresh, and it was good still, and it wasn't fucked up, right? And it's like this happens with every cultivar over history, and that's why, like, in my opinion, knowing where your shit came from is important, because if you do, typically it leads you to something that is really unique. It's not just some renamed bullshit. You're actually like, whoa, this actually is pretty awesome. And for many years that was true in cannabis, but it's really, nowadays it's pretty tough to find much authenticity in the space. But
Yeah, true story, brother. Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that, a lot of these varieties still exist in one way, shape, or form. You just have to be able to identify them. It's just it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Marcus, that a lot of people just can't smell. It's like they can't smell, they can't taste, they don't perceive a lot of what we are getting. And just like you're saying with cilantro, where some people it tastes like soap, it's actually a genetic thing. It's like 15% of the population, they've found the gene that causes it,
Right.
And there's also been several other studies that show that its ability to smell and how you process that information can also be genetic. There's portions of the population that can just smell better or that perceive these things. And then I'm sure it's whether or not you give a shit is a big part of it too, So, if you don't really care about food, then a McDonald's burger is plenty good.
Some people describe things better too,
Yeah.
and put a like nice artistic description. So like with haze, I kind of get like antique hospital a little bit with some like old leather and pepper on it kind of thing for the ones that I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Antiseptic.
yeah, it's got like that hospital, it's almost like nursing homey in a weird way. It sounds weird. Yeah. Like I remember a Cali mist that was heavily that way back in the day. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that strain.
That's why people call it church. Some people, right? Different haze, same type of thing. That weird musty basement, antiseptic. Someone's been, just
old church.
The Nag Champa, that's another one I hear often. Is like,
And
yeah,
so haze just became a term for all these narrow leaf varieties. Like once Skunkman Sam popularized the haze name, now anything that smelled and seemed familiar to that line that became worldwide famous, now people just describe it as haze, right?
Yeah.
So it's not one plant, it's not one smell, it's not any of that. It's a wide range of stuff. That's why I always find it funny. There's a whole portion of like the modern consumer that anytime they smell something that smells hazy at all, they're just like, "Oh, this is haze." And it's like, man, you don't even looking at how deep this side of the cannabis plant goes when you really look into it from the smell.
Yeah,
there's so many hazes out now that are just crosses. They're the only real haze is original haze.
Yeah.
Everything else is a cross. And then as soon as you cross it, you can get all kinds of flavors.
I was collecting a lot of stuff off of like eBay and all these other sites, just like imagery and stuff. And there was this one gentleman I bought, and he was in his late or mid 80s, and he was like, he's like, man, you bought like 15 of these things. I'm getting too old, etc. And with the actual catalogs and all the imagery, he sent me 4 clones, and they were like super narrow varietals, and I still have them. I have no idea what they are, but I gave him the Kevin McKernan at Canopedia, and they don't hit for anything. Like I was just like curious. I was like, what could these be related to? And they just nothing. So I don't know. Like maybe Fletch, I should give them to you, give them to a couple of people, just to like keep them around. But stuff like that I find really interesting. There's just a lot of things getting lost, I think, because people don't have camaraderie. They don't have the ability to give it to people to keeping it. And that's another thing that I think over the years, like we've lost so many things through raids, through closet grows, through whatever,
Greed. Through greed.
It's a lot of work to keep shit alive.
Yeah, man. I mean, think about this. Like I can't imagine, like, we talk about like this small vernacular, right, in my mind of like things that we know, but imagine the things that we don't, right? And all the stuff and the people that have come before us that have held these like probably incredibly legendary clones or sets of seeds and genetics. So it's, I think for what it's worth, like we have a very small lens on a big world that we're constantly finding things in. And I think, yeah, we have basic buckets that we found in flavors, but I wonder sometimes, man, like there's just so much to explore still, like, I do wonder. I don't know if you guys think about this a lot, but the the fact that we believe we know so much, I think is kind of a falsehood in terms of the actual varietals that are out there, you know? So I wonder, like, do you guys believe that we've bottlenecked so hard that, we're kind of just in this vicious cycle of like, these are the ones that we know and this is all that's there, because I truly believe there must be something out there more to search through. It's just how long is it going to take to get to see that, like how long did it take for us to get to acrid skunk? How long did it take us to get to terpenoline, and land on this stuff, and have that dominance? Because if you cross terpenoline dominant to anything, it becomes terpenoline dominance. Like look at a Mac or look at all these different things out there.
I've worked with plenty of terpenoline things, and you get 2 generations in, and it's not terpenoline dominant at all anymore. It's not like literally just 2 generations. That's it.
So what traits do you find?
Hybridize out of it, done. It's already out.
So all right. So the flavor doesn't. So what other traits carry on? Do you feel?
Not out of the population, but where you can find plants that it's not dominant.
Right.
Yeah, but that's that's how dominant and recessive traits work. That's what an F.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Is like you can cross out of it, and I can get more. Like, sure, there's 25% that have some terpenoline, but it's not an impossible. That's only 2 generations in. Is my point.
Interesting. Yeah, but so like, is it? Yeah, but what else? Like, is there morphology that gets carried over? Like, are the bracts like more are tighter and more often? Like, what?
Everything's such a polyhybrid now. You're just gonna you just see all kinds of shit.
Right. Yeah, totally.
My point is,
those pearls
is they don't ruin it for everything. You can make hybrids and get stuff that's doesn't smell like Jack pretty quick.
Yeah, no, I believe that for sure. But I'm saying like most of the time, it carries over pretty dominant, right?
In the F1, but I think that I think what
in the F1
in the F1,
what Fletch is saying is important, right? It's like,
yep,
you got to go down when you're doing these breedings. And it's such a weird thing for a lot of people in the cannabis industry to understand, is that a breeding program doesn't stop at the initial cross.
Correct. Right. No, 100%. Right? That's like not what I'm insinuating, but I just want to make sure that's known. But I'm just asking questions to drum up more conversation here.
My point is, a lot of the preconceptions are things because people literally haven't done the work. They just think that's how it is because one person said that, and it's like, if you've actually gone 3 or 4 generations deep with stuff, it's like you can pretty much kind of do whatever you're breeding towards. I mean, it's not.
Of course,
it's exactly what the books tell you will happen.
Right, but there's also, there's more to this conversation than that as well. Like, I was sitting in chat for a bit, and we're using words like cultivar, and that's just not like, Colombian is not a cultivar. Colombian is a variety. Right. And so it's important to understand the difference in the meaning of these terms so that you can understand like what you're talking about. Like, for example, haze doesn't have one smell. Haze is a polyhybrid of multiple varieties.
Exactly.
Right. So within even the most original line that we have right now, there's a ton of genetic variation built into that line. Right. So like, that's why it's really important to understand the definitions of words like land races and variety and cultivar, because it gives you the context from which to understand how the population is going to behave, which is why I go on and on and on about it. Right. Like I landed on the importance of these terms because saying strain and then giving something a name doesn't inform the buyer of the seeds. Right. And if we're breeders and we're trying to like be honest and have integrity about the populations that we're selling to the public, they should have some context to understand what they're buying, right? And if we say things like, "Oh, it's gelato crossed whatever strain,"
Right.
it implies that everything is the same, and they're just not.
But what
Right?
if what if what if they think strain is cultivar and cultivar is strain?
Anybody that's grown
Well, you're bringing up the
population-
truth, my man. Right?
like anybody that's growing populations of seeds, like if you're growing more than 5-10 seeds at a time,
Yeah.
that's when you actually see the variation, right? If you're growing like a 5-pack of seeds or a 3-pack of seeds like they sell in Europe, your sample size is just not large enough to see the variation that exists within the family, right? So it's only when you're growing at sizable scale that you actually start to understand that, oh my God, there's differences in what these words mean. Right. And so it's like, I know it sounds pedantic to some people, and I keep harping on and on and on about these things, but it's like, it's actually important to understand what those words mean, because there's minutia between the definitions, and that minutia really informs what people can expect. So,
right. No, it's well said, man. And that's the truth too. Yeah, it's, so Ryan, do you often find, I've thought about this a lot. Like we've really undefined the world that we occupy right now in terms of plant science, and we have definitive terms, but they get mixed up. What would be the best way to clean that up in your eyes?
In a lot of contexts, it actually doesn't matter, right? Like if you're saying variety or cultivar and you're a consumer of cannabis that's buying dope from the dispensary, the words actually mean the same thing, right? It's just that to someone that's actually selling genetics or someone that's buying genetics, it's like you really want to understand the difference between variety and cultivar, because it means, like, a cultivar, for example, represents a type. So it's like it's got a fingerprint.
Yeah.
But when you breed it to itself,
hey Ryan,
that fingerprint goes away.
Let's
right?
go. Let's go through them really quick. So a land race is exactly a variety from a specific geographic area, correct?
It's more than that. That's one way to think about it. That's really only one level of the conversation. A land race is a variety that is grown in an environment by a culture for a cultural purpose. Okay? And that's really the definition. So you can look at things like, Pakistani hashish varieties or Afghani hashish varieties. Or another one that I like to give an example is the Thai stick, right? The population that is growing for Thai sticks, because it's a unique phenotype that has been selected for generations and generations for a specific purpose by the people of that culture that are using it for a purpose. Right. So you can think of like hash varieties, in Afghanistan and
then
Pakistan
what is a variety?
and India
What is a variety by definition then?
A variety is a type, right? So a type just means, like, you can call it like a phenotype, really, that is reproducible by seed. And when you do reproduce it by seed, that type reappears. So
it's true to type.
Typically, like, you could talk about like a purple variety or an autoflowering variety or a CBD variety, right?
But also a land race or a variety of origin.
Yeah, that would be a
they can be varieties, but they can also, it depends on how far down you want to get into. That's why I use loose terms like, like purple or CBD or autoflowering.
Well,
right? Like when we say
let's move on to strain. Okay, go.
You're so excited. When you say autoflowering variety, like, people name it. People name it like, my ice cream autoflowering, right? Call it ice cream or gelato autoflowering or whatever. When you grow out the seeds, they all autoflower, but that's the only thing about them that is consistent and stable, right? Like the scent is all over the place, the height is all over the place, the potency is all over the place, right? So the only thing for which it really is defined is autoflowering, right? And so you can differentiate between like CBD varieties or THC varieties. Because when you reproduce those things, the only thing that stays constant is that it's a THC dominant variety or a CBD dominant variety. All the other traits are all over the place, right? So that's how horticulturally we use the word variety. If you move into registered variety, the plants have to be distinct, uniform, and stable for some set of traits, but those traits have to be reliably reproduced generation after generation after generation. Right. So like terpinolene variety being so dominant is actually would be one that might qualify as a variety.
Sure.
Okay. Because it's again, it's like it has to do with like
Traits.
how often does that type reproduce in the population? Okay.
Mhm.
A cultivar is different in that a cultivar does does represent a unique described type. Like we'll go to white warren white thorn rose because Caleb's here and he knows a lot about this one. That one is a cultivar because it's a unique genetic combination that when you try to breed it by seed, it falls apart, right? Like the type doesn't come back. Okay, so that's a cultivar. Another one that's a good example of a cultivar is like a type 2 seed population, right? So like a mixed CBD THC plant that's a hybrid of a THC plant and a CBD plant. That chemical type that represents the type disappears after an after the initial breeding, because it's controlled by a heterozygous it's a heterozygous state at that locus in the genome. So when you reproduce it, you get segregation at that locus, and the type falls into 25% THC, 50% CBD, or 25% CBD, right? And so you can never have like a type 2 variety, right? So a type 2 seed line it would be a hybrid population of seed, but it would be a cultivar. Right. So a cultivar is not just it's not just a clone. It's just that most often cultivars are clones. Right. You can have a cultivar that is a seed population, but it's not a seed line that you can keep growing from seed every year.
Right. It's a
So
specific combination of two plants.
yeah, so when we talk about cultivars, you have like again, let's use the white thorn rose example. What is it? What's the chemical in it again, Caleb? It's selenodiene dominant, right? So if we describe that cultivar, you always have to define the traits that make up the cultivar, right? Like that when you get a cultivar registered, it has to be registered for a set of traits that define what that cultivar is, which is why the fingerprint that Mark is talking about is actually so important. Okay. So if we can create, like, if you register a variety or a cultivar, sorry, by that selenodiene dominant profile or the selene terpene dominant profile, and then somebody shows up with another plant that is like, it's not even genetically related, but it has that same terpene profile, those two plants are part of the same cultivar group. Okay, it's not necessarily a separate cultivar unless there's like other morphological traits that separate those two types. Right? So it's just that in cannabis, it's more common than not that the unique plants that we do come across are single plants, like white thorn rose or uh some of these other the dragonfly earth medicine. Josh and Kelly were talking about this plant when I was staying with them, and they had a valencine dominant plant. Well, that's an incredibly rare terpene profile, right? To have a valencine dominant plant. So that plant would have been a putative cultivar, right? You could register that as a cultivar. based on that unique chemistry of the plant. Right. So when we're buying seeds or selling seeds, we're not really selling cultivars.
Right. It's a hybrid of a cultivar.
Yeah, which is nothing. Right. That doesn't
I was
merit
just
a
saying
name.
that's, it's a clone.
Yeah. Yeah, the clone that is selected, and if you grow in a population of seeds, like even if you buy a hybrid of a cultivar, you might find something unique in that family of seeds that is a cultivar, right? But it's like the process of it becoming a cultivar is what Mark was saying earlier, which is taking that plant to the lab, getting a fingerprint for it, like a chemical fingerprint print, and seeing if there's something unique and special about it, right? And that act of having it chemically analyzed and describing the unique phenotype of the plant, that is what makes it a cultivar, right? If it's unique, if the traits are unique.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned valencine, Ryan, because valencine and selenidiene are like isomers of each other, right? So if you look at the chemical structures, they're very, very similar. They're sesquies, right? And they look like if you look at the two structures side by side, there's very subtle differences between the two structurally.
Yeah, like terpinolene and limonene and so many of the others,
Right,
right?
exactly like that. Yeah,
All
yeah.
the monoterps have essentially the same chemicals.
Yeah, it's just the position of the double bonds or sometimes stereoisomers. And it's just so cool that, our noses are sophisticated enough to do the olfactory spectroscopy to be able to distinguish between very, very subtle differences of these guys.
Well, and yeah, the thing that I find interesting is that there's a genetic reason for that difference in molecule, right? Like there's
Right.
some kind of something going on in the plant, probably a protein involved in, you know, when those molecules are being made, it's like it goes down one pathway or another. It really just has to do with a proton or an electron being landing in a
Well, yeah, it
different
all
spot.
comes from isoprene. So isoprene, two molecules of isoprene get together, make the monoterp. And this case, this is a sesqui, so it needs another molecule of isoprene, right? So these are 15 carbon, not just 10 carbon compounds. But yeah, it's just so cool because you could start to see the structural homology between the pathway or the compounds themselves, and that can, again, lead you back to the biosynthetic root, which all comes from some type of usually they're like the geranyl phosphates and farnesyl phosphates and those kinds of fatty acid precursors, right?
Yeah, you look at it from a chemistry perspective. I always look at it from like, I mean, the chemistry perspective in my mind is kind of like how those molecules are put together in the factory line. But
Right.
it's to me, it's about the enzymes, which are like the factory workers that pass those molecules through the factory line,
Yeah.
right? And those subtle differences in the genetic sequences of the workers is what yields the different outcome in at the end of the pathway.
Right, the metabolic profile, and like what we ended up tasting is the function of what those factory workers are slaving to get us. And I think what was said earlier, I think it was you, Tony, that talked about it. Like again, different regions of the earth or just different growing techniques to really to practice this to really get the fullest expression of that profile, right? So you're getting, the plant to do all the heavy lifting that it's developed. It's over the time course of its evolution to be able to really provide those flavors that and it ultimately experiences that people just love.
Yeah, I'm not
When they
sure,
all
Ryan. Did you see any of Tony's and Dave's photos that they shared of like the pearls?
No, I
It was
didn't know.
it was very reminiscent of your friend in Holland who's got one of what's his name, Ben, or hate to get his name wrong, XNBO or something. Dominic,
You want me
yeah,
to pull back up?
Dom, yeah, he has, yeah, I put some up, man. It's Yeah, Tony's and Dave's story was a cool story, Ryan. You'll have to watch it later, but just, been popping seeds and growing Colombians and wide leaf narrow drug cultivars, and just as you guys were saying all these different important things, I was thinking of what Tony said earlier, which was every calyx is sacred. Like both.
Hey, Marcus, could I ask Tony a question about the calyx itself? So when you look at those structures, again, I think you had pointed out earlier that, and I think a few people in the chat were buzzing about this. They look like seed casings, right? I mean, it looks like it's like spherical in nature. That's why if you could share one of those photos so Ryan could see it, would be really
Yeah, he's
great.
getting them.
Yeah,
He's getting
I've
back up.
seen the pearls phenotypes.
So Ryan, so talk about so why did the plant evolve to make those structures? Why are those structures very different looking than everything else? And why are they expressing cannabinoids and trichomes?
Well, I mean, those are different questions. They're interesting questions, but like the shape thing, the phenotype thing, plants don't really care. Like we tend to anthropomorphize plants. Sorry, I'm not saying that word very well today. Um, we tend to give plants human qualities, right? And desire. Whereas like plants they don't have those kinds of things. They're just really trying all the genetic options. Like it's like combinatorial mathematics, right? It's like how many different traits can this thing try altogether? The cannabis genome is always changing, right? It's always going through mutations. There's all these active what are they called? Jumping genes, right? There's all these active um, pieces of DNA elements that are moving around the genome that are kind of like shuffling the structure of the genome. And so if you look at cannabis, like not on a plant level, but on a population level, there's all this genetic variation built into the genome. And I think every organism is really just like you can think of it like a biological exploration or an exploration of biological space, right? And so they're just reshuffling all these different genes and putting them together in different ways and trying to figure out which combination of traits gives it the most advantageous opportunity in the environment
For survival.
right? And so for survival, exactly, because it's like more genetic variation just means that
Not
it's like you
survival,
have
but reproduction, don't you think?
they're both this
Yeah.
in that context they're the same thing. Yeah, like when Darwin talked about fitness, his measure of fitness was not like the
Reproductive fitness.
triathlon. It meant fitness. He meant by fitness was the ability to leave offspring.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And so you get like this strange phenotype, call it the pearls, which to me is just a very loose flower phenotype. If you took if seeds that have that phenotype, and then you took a bunch of Afghan seeds that have big floral clusters that are really dense and rock hard, and you take those things down to the jungle where it's really humid, and you plant them near the equator, where the sun is incredibly strong. One, the humidity is going to mold the shit out of the Afghan plants because there's no airflow through the flower, and two, the wide leaves that catch tons and tons of light are going to essentially overheat the plant. Whereas if you have a plant that has very thin lamina or thin finger blades on the leaf, they actually absorb less light, right? And so in this incredibly high light environment, less light is a good thing because plants overheat just like humans do, right? And so they have to find ways through selection or evolution to deal with that excess in light that they're collecting or that excess in heat, right? Because they have to get rid of that light energy or that light radiation in some way.
So I have a question. The length of flowering time then determines or is a factor of how much they can reproduce. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's highly selected on by the environment, right? Like
Right. Right. In Afghanistan, they can only flower for so long.
Right, but here's another way of looking at it. The plants that ended up way north that became ruderalis, like a lot of people like to put ruderalis in its own category, but really ruderalis is a subcategory of sativa. And by sativa, I mean hemp. Because what happened at some point in time is like somebody took a large population of cannabis seeds north, or maybe it was a bird flying, right, and dumping out a bunch of crap that had seeds. Either way, a bunch of cannabis seeds ended up far north. The ones that had the traits for long flowering, they never got a chance to leave their offspring, right? But the ones that had that mutant gene that made them auto flowering plants, they were able to flower and set seed and leave seed in the environment that was able to survive the winter, right? If you were like a 10-week long equatorial plant that didn't trigger flowering until, November, by the time it's snowing in like, October, everything like that is dead, right? And so it's always this dance about like the genetics in the population or in the family have the certain set of traits, but it's the environment that steps in and really exerts the pressure that allows those things to either leave their genetics for the next generation or not. Right. And so that's kind of like when we go, going touching back on what a land race is you add in not only the environmental pressure, but you're adding in also the cultural pressure because the people from within that culture, they have a specific intended use. Right. And so it becomes kind of like this modern or not modern, this traditional form of breeding, right? That is kind of akin to like, like the native Central Americans that turned teosinte into maize, right? Like they turned the wild relative of corn into maize was like not quite corn, but it was, it was more developed than teosinte, right? So it's like even cultures, and we've been doing this for 10,000 years, right? As people got into agriculture and started growing lots of seeds, they'd be going through the garden just like we do, and they'd say, hey, they'd see, hey, these ones are better for our purpose than those other ones, right? And so you get a phenotype like this, and yeah, that's gonna be selected in the environment or by the environment because it's like that thing grows in a high humidity area, and it would do better than an Afghan type plant, right? Because it's so loose and open that flower structure would be open.
And natural selection is going to take over. And
yeah, it's always a combination of the two, right? Like environmental pressure is going to definitely play a huge role. And then there's the pressure of the cultivator that also plays a huge role. And the use for the product, right? So it's like you might have something like you try to grow that thing in let's call it, between 2008 to 2011, you try to grow that thing in California and sell it. Nobody wants to buy it, right? It's like you got such a strict environmental selection, commercial selection by the environment. But I think they're beautiful.
Oh my God, I want to buy it.
I've got some lines that do the same thing, right? But and Mark, you talk about like you asked what the purpose of the resin is or the trichomes. You go back to look at structurally, where is the highest concentration of those compounds or those structures and compounds? It's right around the seed, right? And so to me, it immediately goes to there's some functional role that those structures and compounds are having that benefit the survival of the seed.
Well, right? if we were to extrapolate on that, what would be more profound for the success of cannabis seeds than us loving that resin?
Yeah. Attracting humans.
That was secondary. Yeah, that was a secondary result.
I know we think that, but I'm telling you, it's the biggest. We have ensured the success of cannabis from our love of that resin.
Yeah, but that's a second to me. That's a secondary trait.
Yeah, it evolved first, and then we, co-evolved.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we really ramped up that selection pressure.
Big
Because
time.
it was good for us. There's no doubt about that. But it's probably that those, and we know this as well, Marcus, that like, it also happens to turn out that all those molecules that are surrounding the seed, they promote
Mhm.
the survival of the seed.
Yeah.
Like they're antifungal, they're antibacterial, right? And so
Totally.
it's you kind of think of it like, a female womb, right? It's like
Yeah.
it creates conditions that are
Oh
inhospitable
my
to other
God, look at
organisms.
that. I just
So,
think that's so
and
pretty.
it is pretty, but it's just one end of the spectrum, right? And
Yeah.
it's
My
one
favorite
example
end.
where, like, you can kind of say that that's like I think some would argue that that's a bit of a wild phenotype. It's not a modern phenotype because the modern farmers are selecting towards yield and they're selecting towards density because the market demands all that stuff.
Mhm.
But in reality, this also has its appeal,
Oh my
right?
God,
And
does it
and
ever?
its use. So, are these terpinolene dominant plants?
Some
I
of
don't
them.
think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I gave 16 of the original hay seeds that David gave me. I gave them to this guy Dominic in Holland, and he's a contract research organization. He's not commercial, but we essentially, hired him to grow these seeds and get a look at the chemical diversity. They're all going to go to the lab so that Diana and the family have the information for when they're deciding what they want to do with the seeds. So, but
Some of them
Hayes is an
are
interesting one
terpinolene
because,
dominant.
sorry.
A lot of it's like they're terpinolene dominant, and you can't tell at first because of oh, I hate that echo, because of the other terpenes. Once those volatile terpenes evaporate, you taste more of the terpinolene in it.
Yeah, well, I've also figured out not through breeding, but through testing a lot of these terpinolene dominant plants. Like we have one up here in Canada we call sweet skunk, or it's a line that's derived from sweet skunk, and it's got terpinolene in it, but it also has a big fat dose of osamine in roughly equal proportions. Most of the terpinolene plants that you see, the essential oil is like totally dominated by or terpinolene. It's like 75-80% terpinolene, and it gives it that really astringent, piney scent to it. But when you find the rare plants that actually blend terpinolene with other things like beta caryophyllene or osamine, especially, that's when you start getting these really incensey notes. And it sweetens up and it makes it kind of, I call it like, it makes it more tropical. Like the osamine plants, in my opinion, are kind of more like uh Hawaiian or tropical or like pina colada and pineapple type flavors. Maybe not pineapple as much, but there's just more of like a tropical flavor to them.
Right. They have more depth and dankness to them to me.
They're more complex, right?
Yeah,
They're
more
a lot.
complex.
So, um, and we also got to remember too, it's like when we start talking about terpene profiles, scent is so much more than that, right? Terpenes play a huge role for sure, but there are these other volatile classes of compounds like the thiols and the esters, like the esters, for example. I mean, like, grapefruit. Mark knows grapefruit very well. I'm sure Fletch knows it quite well too. Grapefruit is actually a terpinolene dominant plant, right? But it has this real strong grapefruit note. That's the grapefruit note doesn't come from the terpenes. It comes from the esters that are within the plant.
Nucatone.
Yeah, I'm not.
Nucatone is the grapefruit terpene, right?
I'm not sure that it is. It
Isn't
might
it?
be. Well, I know it is in grapefruits.
Right.
Is
They
it?
were talking about it, Ian, and when we had that conversation. It's a combination of things, like a sliding scale that you can slide it over and turn it into a grapefruit smell and taste. I don't think there was a particular one single.
Well, there's something at the root of that scent. It's part of what we haven't done. Like we've decided, okay, terps are responsible for scent. And so we run all these plants, like thousands of plants through these terpene labs. But we're not looking for esters and thiols and things like that in the plant. Like we're not really looking at the other volatiles, right? And so inevitably, I think that we have to go back and redo all that work using these things like 2D chromatography,
I mean,
right?
most of the samples that end up in the labs aren't even fresh enough to even get an accurate like representation, because we all know the like very best varieties like OG, it loses a lot of what makes OG awesome within the first few weeks of it being dry and cured. So I mean, it's like you got to get it and get it in there fresh to even find out what it is that people really love about fresh OG.
Absolutely. And, most of the testing that's been done on these plants has been done to satisfy a regulatory demand.
Exactly.
They haven't been done to
For
really try to
analysis.
understand it,
Yeah.
right? To really do a deep science understanding of what's going on. And there's so much, it's one of the things that we love about cannabis, right? Like there's so many types, there's so much flavor and scent variation for us to explore, right?
There's
It's
no
like,
other plant. There's no other plant like it that even comes close. You've got almost it somehow is able to replicate almost every other smell and flavor on the planet. Everything from candy to fruit to rotting corpses, airplane glue, you name it.
Dude,
Cannabis
charcuterie
pretty much
board.
do it.
I
I
just
mean, you
saw a
remember
rosin that smelled like charcuterie board, like meat and cheeses and nuts.
turkey dinners. I mean,
What
you
the
name it. It's out there. And to expand on Ryan's point is like, and Ryan, you probably know the answer to this. Most plants have significantly more genetic diversity than humans have by a large margin. It's like if the amount of data in a plant's DNA is much larger than that of humans because they've been evolving on this planet. So it's like, we've got however many billion people on this planet, and no humans look the same exactly unless they're twins or something. The plant has way more data to remix itself and turn it into almost anything else within its family, and it's just the amount of diversity available on this plant is significantly more than we have even in the human genome.
yeah. And, I'm gonna bring up like there's all these weird things that happen, like you bring up a picture, you find some famous guy and then you look back in pictures from like 100 years ago and you see someone that looks like almost the same or almost identical as another guy
Yeah,
that exists today. That's kind of like you can kind of take that analogy towards cultivar, right? It's like
exactly.
these things that we see are really just represented by combinations of unique traits, and that combination of unique traits is incredibly rare, but it's not like you can't find two in a million or two in a billion.
They're not exactly the same, but to our senses, they're so close that they may as well be indistinguishable.
Yeah, and that's why you start saying, "Oh, look, Elon Musk is a time traveler. Here's a guy in a photo from 1907 that looks exactly the same as him today." Right? It's like it's just because those two organisms share a very close combination of the genetic variation that exists within the species. Right. And
At
what
least,
you're saying is,
at least the ones that we're perceiving, right? Because we're only saying that they're the same because they look the same to us. But what percentage of the human genome is what your face looks like? You know?
well, exactly. And that's where it's like, it comes down to things like, like we can register, when we register plants, you register them basically on their physical appearance. That's how plant registrations were typically done. Like you actually
Yeah.
weren't even allowed to consider chemistry, right? Like you can't register a rose based on its scent profile. David and I approached the people that run UPOV, which is the Union for the Protection of Plant Varieties, in 2016 when I left NAPRO. And NAPRO was doing all this patent work, and I wanted to figure out what I couldn't do because I'd been working with them, and I had this non-compete. And so David took me to this lawyer in Holland, and she also represented UPOV. And we essentially explained to her that we David understood that you couldn't register plants based on their chemistry. You could only register plants based on their morphology at the time. And we explained to her that the differences between cannabis cultivars or cannabis varieties is typically it is the unique chemistry of the plant. Like that's what we use to separate one plant that's highly desirable from another plant that is maybe less desirable. And we explained to her that like this system of like registering plants based solely on morphology just wasn't adequate for cannabis. And she said to us that we could petition them to reshape the system, right? And that for a fee, they'd be happy to do that for us, of course, being a lawyer. And it just wasn't, we weren't going to spend the 25,000-30,000 euros at the time to do that. But it is something that can be done, that we can evolve this system. And it's, it's like, again, it's one of these places where cannabis is on the cutting edge and it's forcing us to reconsider the way that we do things, like with agriculture, right? It's like, this regulatory demand that we have on cannabis is showing that, like, hey, when you spray a plant like 9 months ago, it still has a tiny little bit of pesticide in the plant, right? And it's making us question these assumptions that we have about the safety of pesticide use in like fruits and veggies, right? It's like cannabis again is like, as we really truly try to integrate this species into commercial trade, we have to reevaluate the way that some of these systems work. So cannabis is a great plant. I mean, it's like you said, it's got all this genetic, and part of that genetic variation is due to the way that it breeds. Like, cannabis is an outcrosser. It typically breeds by crossing one plant to another, right? And that type of mating system accumulates genetic variation. It doesn't narrow genetic variation, right? And so the species as a whole kind of collects this genetic variation. And it's only through inbreeding that we get to pare down and like see some of these more recessive traits, right? These recessive genetic
what
conditions.
we consider desirable traits. The shotgun of the unselected population is every trait that the plant needs to survive, not the traits that we deem valuable.
Yeah. Well, and the question is are the traits that we deem valuable even necessary for survival? I mean, we call them.
I guess we don't know that, do we?
Well, we call them. We call these chemicals secondary metabolites, right? A secondary metabolite is a chemical that the plant produces that's not required for the primary survival of that plant, right? The primary metabolites are the ones that are really important. If you don't have that trait, you're done. The thing won't survive.
But
Right?
theoretically, the plant being able to produce all these different terpene, ester, whatever, combination means that at some point, either the environment or human interaction, convinced this plant essentially or allowed it to evolve with this new trait or this new, for some reason that made it better to survive.
It's the other way around. It's the other way around. Luck and happenstance created that scent. With humans or the environment is what reinforces that scent. Right. So it's like,
right. But how did that diversity happen in cannabis, but it doesn't exist in like mangoes?
Well, for one, how long does it take to plant a mango seed before it's producing new seeds? Right? Like cannabis, you plant one
right,
seed.
Sure, I guess it evolves. Yeah, we just don't see it. But you know what I'm saying? Like we started with a much wider group of colors in cannabis than you start.
Not necessarily. I don't think that we did start with a wider set. It's that we ramp through generations way faster.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. And one plant produces, 10,000 seeds or more.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's like we get through generational cycling and the because remember all this stuff is just about
But for us
different.
for us to find those traits, wouldn't those traits that have to have existed 10,000 years ago prior to us influencing it?
No.
Okay.
No, new stuff can pop up in your garden because it's
Well,
just the result. Like, remember what
you know what I mean, though.
yeah,
It's
no,
like,
but like
I guess the question is all the new stuff that we've seen are those all new mutations then?
not necessarily. They could just be uncovered, right? And it's
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
yeah, but it can be the result of new thing, and there's no way to know,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Like
I
there
just
really
think
is
the
no way to
mutation
know.
is probably less common.
No,
Okay.
mutation in cannabis is massive, and that's what the sequencing is showing, is that there's no selection pressure against mutation, right? Like in outcrossers, there's very little selection pressure against mutation, and usually those mutations are recessive, so there's no selection force against them, right?
Well,
And they just
I
get
guess
passed
I'm
around.
thinking more just smell and flavor, not so much like morphology, but they're the same thing, but that was my thought process behind it, because we have seen a lot more, quote unquote new mutations in terms of morphology with like the fern looking plant, the freak show stuff, and web plants, duck plants, all that kind of stuff.
Right, but and I agree with you in that like we are seeing that stuff more. That's probably because we're growing it more. When you think about like how that stuff happens actually at the genetic level, there's no way to tell whether that mutation occurred in the freak show guy's garden, or is it just that he
The
uncovered it
pre-existing
through.
recessive
Yeah,
trait. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so, and when we're talking about like Mark was saying, like these things are a result of genetic mutations in the kind of the factory workers, the enzymes. It's like there's no way to differentiate whether it pops up in your garden or you just uncover it.
I guess unless you have a genome sequence of your population already,
Before and
and you can
after.
say,
Yeah, exactly.
correct. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. But
Hey
we don't have
guys,
that data.
Yeah.
it sounds like Dave and Tony have to get going here, so I just wanted to sort of be able to say goodbye to them and let the audience know where they can be found if they're on social media or if they're in Cali and they want to try those
Yeah, I gotta go.
flavors. Tony can
Tony's
stay?
more than welcome to stay on. I just gotta tap
Oh, that'd
out
be awesome.
for some other stuff.
Okay,
got
awesome. Well,
kids.
before you
Yeah.
leave, do you want to mention sort of where people can find this product or the social media or whatever in order maybe they have more
Yeah.
questions or they want to learn more?
Yeah, for sure. So the brand is Budulero. We're available in the California rec market. You can get a hold of us, budulero at Gmail. So it's and then Head Grower on Instagram, Irie Touch on Instagram, and Tony is Budular Humble. That's the quick and dirty.
Okay,
I want to
word.
shout out my brother-in-law Isaac, who's not on. He's the man behind the logo and kind of like the other portion of this family thing we got going here.
It's awesome, man. Love to hear it.
Yeah, we're starting a flower club soon, and we'll have a website up and running, budulero.org.
Nice. That's awesome. Well,
So,
keep doing the
yeah,
good
thanks
work,
for having me on. I
Dave,
really
and-
appreciate it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. It was nice chatting with everyone.
And if you
Thanks
want to
for sharing,
see
guys.
more long flowering varieties, Budular Humboldt on Instagram. I got a lot of pictures of stuff I've grown over the years that
Nice.
are on there.
Okay, well, maybe we'll even show some of those in a little bit as we get back into that part of the conversation. I also have some videos that Brian sent me yesterday from his place over in Maine, and they're really beautiful as well. He's got his plants in his garden with flowers and like beautiful beds and fucking rainbows coming out of his plants. It's really, really beautiful, Brian.
Thank you. I actually just ran out and shot one little video of some African Haze S1 and some Cuban Haze by African Haze S1s that were sent to me by a friend, little late season testers, just so you know, I can shoot your way too. Here
Nice,
in Maine,
yeah.
outdoor.
Throw them up or send them to me and I'll throw them up.
Yeah.
I'm always down. I think I moved these photos these videos that you sent me, so I could I might be able to put a couple of those up. I'm on a pretty not good computer, and I definitely need to get my shit together when it comes to.
Are you in Montreal or are you up in Whistler?
I am just in one of the townships just outside of Montreal.
Oh, nice. You're out east. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So nice to be out here. Okay, I got one open. I'm going to try and put this up. I think it'll share your voice if I share it the right way.
Okay.
That's weird. I've seen that before. Oh, that's advanced. That's why. Share sound. Yes, it will. All right, here we go. This is one that you sent me of some beds or a little hoop house or something at your place. Wait a minute. It's making me want to put a code in to be able to share. It's messing with me.
Me through my friend.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'll ask.
I don't know. Forget it. It's too slow. It's too slow. I'd already stopped it.
No worries at all.
We're not doing that. My computer's just so I think I'll smash it after this. The problem is it keeps working for basically most of what I need it for, which is to send emails when I'm on the road. But otherwise, running Hash Church with this thing, dude, this is like an 8 to 9 year old laptop and a Mac, whatever.
Wow.
I know, it's amazing that it still works. Like 4 years out of these things.
Yeah.
But I wish I could have shared those because they were really nice. But of course, I'm handcuffed and unable to. But we'll go through them next Sunday.
It was fun to show them to you. I was really happy to send them your way.
Oh, dude, I really wanted to. Of course, I wanted to share them now. That's why this computer's like, no, we will not be sharing those. What's that?
You got them somewhere on file.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just can't. I can't share videos.
Marcus, you know geography as good as I do. You know, Maine is close to Quebec.
I know. We were looking at it the other day. It was very, very close. Trust me. And I'll be coming out here more often. I don't know if I showed this one earlier, but I'll show it again. This is like some of the works.
That's a nice ball. Is that like an ounce, a couple ounces right there, even?
Yeah, maybe four.
Yeah. Nice egg right there.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one in Canada has come up with a hockey puck. You know, where they do a hockey puck mold with the hash, because I mean, you guys are, yeah, you know, because it's fucking great.
It's fucking great. The hash smokers definitely watch hockey. I don't know why that hasn't really picked up. Probably because, you know, back in the day when you tried to buy hash, someone would try to sell you a hockey puck.
Yeah. Or it could be.
Oh, that was the Canadian code for
shaved off. Like, hey, what the fuck is this, man? It seems like rubber. Not to mention, hockey puck is a fucked up recipe. If you actually look at the company, I think they're actually all made in Quebec. I think all the NHL hockey pucks are made in Quebec. I could be wrong. They definitely make a lot of pucks here. They don't puck around here in Quebec.
They like the traditional hash over there too.
Dude,
Montreal.
They fucking love it. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I was at a sensory event the other day with the group of people I'm working with. Awesome people. Shout out to all of you guys if you're watching. And we tested the 10 top hashes that were on the legal market in Canada. And then we tested a few that the team had made, and it was I had a hash hit with a ceramic tip and a ceramic, like a mouthpiece and a ceramic bowl that I was testing all the hashes out of, and it was like quite nice to smoke, 13 or 14 different types of hash all in a row, probably over the course of maybe like 35 minutes with my buddy Johnny, who did each flavor with me. And some were definitely like not that enjoyable, but overall the high was so mellow and relaxing that it was very different from being high on dabs. It was very much like being stoned on hash, and I enjoyed it. I appreciated it.
I gotta shout out the French, because even back in the 90s when I was, when I was first having to score hash on the streets in Europe, even the Germans would say, "Oh, if you want to find good hash, find the French," because they've always been about and have kept alive a lot of tradition, because a lot of hash has been smuggled in to France, because there was a demand, because they weren't going to compromise. So shout out to the French for not compromising and keeping the traditional crafts alive. But fuck you for cornering it all the goddamn because there is so little. That's the reality, right? It takes a lot of plants to make a little bit of quality hash. You know what I'm saying? And that's the reality of things. And when it comes to connoisseurs, that's one thing. But when it comes to business, as you can see, as it's changed over the decades, they will compromise.
What's the ratios on making hash with those pearls, Tony?
From everything I've heard, it's pretty good. I don't, I'm a flour guy myself.
Yeah.
I've always been into flour, but if I do make hash, um, I usually just do dry sift, and I don't even clean it. But it's really good quality from off the pearls, and I get quite a return. One of the pictures on my Instagram page shows the return off of a small amount of pearls. It totally coated the bottom of the pan, and I could write pearl keef in it. So with all the trichomes so visible and so open, it washes real good from everything I've heard.
That's awesome. I guess if it's just pure calyx, like how couldn't it, right? You'd think it would be like one of these, like, oh my God, well, just the fact that it's all calyxes, I mean, you'd think it should probably wash pretty good, because that's where a lot of trichomes grow.
Right,
But
everything's so exposed.
Hayes also is infamous for, like, some of these cultivars are like, people often get lower yields. They're like, oh, I only got, and then dry sift as well is like, oof, that's depending on how you're dry sifting, because there's definitely like a lot of different ways to do it. But the humidity and the temperature are very important for dry sifting to work properly. And we've run material that just had a few percent too much humidity in even just the plant matter, and it won't release the resin.
Yeah, and I've done, with original haze, it's more oily instead of dry, so I get less return on original haze. I don't make hash out of. I just smoke straight as flour because of that oiliness.
I wonder if that's a terpene.
The pearls, I can get a pretty good return, just sifting real quick.
I wonder if that's the terpinolene. I
It
wonder what it
makes a
is.
heady BHO, that's for sure.
The only time I've ever seen haze hashes was in Amsterdam at Katsu, right? Because it's just how rare it is, even in dispensaries and stuff like that. It's getting better, but to find, pure stuff, it really stays on the hill or close to the farm, because, nobody's really growing it to scale. I mean, not like, what Tony is doing. That's very rare. We just don't see that, unfortunately, at the dispensary level, because again, the market as for adult use has gone toward that 6 to 8 week varietal, because it's been bred for that high THC. And so there's this causation of thought that, high THC means a better high. Whereas as a patient and my patient base, would prefer these hazes because they're going to get an effect that is unattainable in these other varietals. At the same time, there's unique terpene profiles as they're finding that they're saying have been extinct that they're finding on plants of cannabis that are grown outdoors compared to indoors. So again, that's a whole other medicinal level that needs to be explored through some research to prove what we think again, as we've thought with many of the things that science has found out, that there's a causation there, but what that causation there is worthy of further exploration.
I agree.
So next generation, get on that shit. Love you.
Yeah, I'm retired now. I'm letting Dave and Isaac do all the work. I'm just a tester.
Yeah, you're doing the important job. You're bioassaying.
Right. And
Yeah,
that's
well,
the other
thanks.
thing I wanted to bring up too is tolerance. With the pearls, I don't build up any tolerance at all. I've been smoking them for a couple of years now, pretty much exclusively, and I don't build up a tolerance. I mean, still take one or two hits and I can get off on it.
Can I ask
Um,
what the THC levels
I,
on those plants?
yeah, the THC level isn't that high, I don't think, on them. I would say they're in the 20 range. Um, but there's an awful lot of other stuff in there that I don't, you can't quantify.
I
Yeah, well,
asked
that's why
that
you're not
question
getting
2
burnt
hours
out.
ago.
That's why you're not getting burnt out, is because you're not overclocking your receptors and down regulating them. I've been saying this for a long time too. We did a bunch of testing down in California when I was down there, and I grew out a bunch of stuff from seed, and a lot of it was in that 8 to 12% range, maybe 15, and it had beautiful headspace, right?
Yeah,
Like it's just when this drive to high numbers has put us into a type of flower that's it's strong as shit, but there's all these other effects. I
yeah,
think the sweet
strength
spot
doesn't
is much
equal
better.
euphoria. From what my
I agree.
experience over the years, strength is not, doesn't run parallel with euphoria. So,
No,
the higher euphoria strains that I've had were always the longer flowering ones.
yeah, well, we
The
know this
more
too with
knockout,
THC that it's got a biphasic dose response curve, which just means like you go up when you consume some, but when you consume a lot, you actually go back down. Like it's like an inverted kind of parabola. So you get higher
right?
as you go up, but then when you get higher and higher again, you actually crash.
Yeah, I
So
used to say when I was younger, it's like you take a couple of hits and you're nice and high, but then you take, a few more and you're stoned.
yeah, I'm really interested to get those haze results back from the lab soon. And I think it's going to be the same thing. And it goes with David's experience, right? Of like smoking more and more and more, and you get higher and higher and higher. I think it's like
Right.
that he just was never hitting that point in the curve where you actually start to come down.
Well, not
But
really come down, you zone out. It's like you'll sit there and stare at something for an hour.
yeah, you
That's
get
what
into
it
that
seems like to
couch
me.
lock zone, right? Like
What's that?
you get into that couch lock zone. They've done this with pure THC. Like you see it if you see people taking Sesamet, right?
Right,
It's like you take one pill, you're high. You take 5 pills, it's like you're fucking flattened into the couch,
right.
right? Um,
On 11 hydroxy, right? If you're taking pills.
there's
The
also
what?
that complicating factor. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, and plus it's a delayed onset of activity where if you're ripping a bong or if you're pulling a dab, you're going to get immediate penetration into your CB1 receptor, uh, rich area of your brain, right? And that's why after just a hit or two, you could feel it already. Pills take what, a half hour or something like that.
Yeah. They got to get out in your system, in your bloodstream.
Right. And then you have to build up a level so much in your bloodstream that it starts spilling into your brain. And at that
Right.
point, your peripheral endocannabinoid system, right? So there's the CB1 receptors primarily in your brain. Your CB2s are all throughout your body. So you've taken up the level of cannabinoids throughout your body, which again starts, doing all kinds of stuff on your CB1. That's why you get the couch lock or the guy who eats the brownie and then passes out.
Right. Yeah, I'm eating 2 grams of RSO now. I have prostate cancer, so I'm eating 2 grams of RSO every night, and I still take a couple of hits off a pinner of that African haze, O haze, or the pearls, and I'm high.
Jesus Christ, 2 grams.
That's great. That's I think we're all searching for that dialing in of the medicine like you got, Tony. It's
Hero
like
dose.
once you find that, man, you don't need anything else, right? It's kind of like finding your favorite flavor of scotch or something, right?
Right.
Hey, Tony, thank you for preserving those weird lines.
Definitely helps.
Thank you for preserving those weird plants when everybody else was moving towards the big, thick ones.
Yeah, it's the whole reason was because when I started growing, I was growing strictly for my stash. It was all about my stash because I couldn't afford weed. So I kept that all through the 57 years that I've been growing. Even when I was growing all the OGs and the diesels and everything else, that was just to allow me to continue my love for the long flowering varieties and be able to support myself.
Well, I'm sure glad you did. I'm glad everyone that's collecting long flowering. We were talking earlier how everyone calls everything haze in, well, I guess probably more of a North American place, but I saw the same thing in Jamaica where they called all the sativas were like lamb's bread. It was like a lamb's bread, and people were like, "Oh, I'm trying to find the lamb's bread," and I'm like, "No, I don't think it's a the. I think it's a they." I think there's like a bunch of them, and it took me years to figure that out. And going to Jamaica quite a bit before I did put that together. That yeah, they were just like if it was one of those longer flowering, like they also would call them like grandmothers, right? These like old school kind of strains that yeah, where they when Jamaica plants were still 10 feet tall, you could stand underneath them.
Right.
They thems.
Yeah, they thems.
Well, anybody ever read
wasn't
the
it
book,
true in
Smoke
early
Screen?
early days of sour? There was like a lot of people just calling weed diesel. It's like, oh man, it was more of like an adjective, like a descriptive.
Right.
Oh, that's really
Like
diesel,
skunk
man.
weed.
Yeah, or
Like
skunk, right?
skunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Kush. Yeah,
Right.
it's we've gone through
Exactly. I was
we've
growing
cycled
Kush in
through the whole.
79 in Humboldt.
Tell us about that Kush.
What's that?
Tell us about that plant. Like, how does it smell? How does it grow?
It was a 4 foot tall, came straight from Afghanistan. The seeds came from a guy that went over there and got them and brought them back to Humboldt. And it tasted exactly like the black Afghani hash that used to come in with the gold seal on it.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, straight up, I used to say, why do they even make hash out of it when the bud tasted so good? That's how good it was. And it was very skunky.
Tony, I heard this story about some Kush seeds coming back in the 70s, early 70s, with some black hash that were found in the hash itself up near Wichipec or something like that.
Right.
Is that a story that you know of up there, or have you heard?
I heard about a friend of mine in Canada found a seed in a block of hash, and that got around a bunch of people up there. I remember. I never got to grow that one, but these were straight brought in as seed. They weren't from out of a chunk of hash. The hash, back the best hash was the temple balls from Nepal. Those things, it was hand rubbed. I mean, they were like pure euphoria almost.
I love that.
And then there was the black Afghani, there was Pakistani. There was a lot of good hash. I never found a seed in any hash, but the good quality hash never had. If like I remember seeing some Jamaican hash, right? They tried to make hash in Jamaica. I think Bubble Man knows something about that with the bubble bags and stuff. Well, the first stuff that came back in the 70s when they were trying to make hash out of that was real rough, like bad quality hash. It wasn't screened very well. And in that, you could find a seed occasionally because it was low quality hash. So the lower quality hash is what, you find the seeds in. And I always smoked good quality hash.
That makes sense.
Back then.
Right on.
Tony, did you ever grow
Afghani
Panama Red back in the day?
That I grew in Humboldt were out of this world. They were so good.
Wow.
And I had another one that was a Mazzari. These guys came, this couple, a man and a lady, came from back east to visit this friend of ours in Humboldt, and our neighbor, and he invited us up to party that night. And they had this ounce that they bought in Tahoe, an ounce of Afghani weed, or it was indica weed. And they brought it over, and I rolled a joint of it, and I found a seed, and I said, "Hey, what is this?" And they said, "Oh, it's Missouri indica." And I'm like, "Missouri indica? What the hell, Missouri?" I didn't know they grew weed like this in Missouri. So anyway, I grew that out, and it was like an incredible plant. And it had these sticky golf ball sized. They were so incredibly sticky. It almost killed itself with the resin. And it was so rank tasting, the smell and the flavor of it, that I couldn't smoke it. It made me throw up. So I put it in a tin and I smashed it all down into a little brick inside this tin and closed it up, put it under a bench in with the rest of my stash and forgot about it. And after I finished all my good weed, I pulled out that tin. It was like towards the end of summer, and I was before harvest. So I thought, I got to smoke this because I don't have nothing else. I opened it up and it was like a rock. It had turned to like fossilized or something. It turned into a rock. And I had to scrape it with a knife to get a little bit of, like dust.
Oh, what happened there?
Oh, we lost him.
We lost him. Well, I like listening to his stories. I hope he comes back. I like
man, mid-sentence too. Oh,
I know. I was listening. I felt like I was listening to a podcast, and I'm fucking on the podcast.
Well, that's the joy of this, right? We're always learning and absorbing, right? As we,
No, but I forgot I
look,
was a part of it for a while, dude. Like I was listening to the podcast. When he went,
seriously.
I was like, "Oh shit, I'm moderating this." Oh, hello now.
I look forward to the day when there's a hash church where we actually mail the hash to everybody who's going to watch the show. And then, then they actually smoke the hash at certain points during the show. You know what I'm saying? That would be,
there you go.
That's
when the holy music plays.
Sort of like an advent calendar of sorts.
I'm down.
The loaves and the fishes.
But for hour 1, hour 2, hour 3, hour
Like
3.5, hour 4, and if we go to 420,
Get data on the frequency.
right? Hey, put it out there. You never know, man. Someone will be like, yes, because people do advent calendars, because I'm starting to see that stuff starting to appear now. But in California they do it with joints. So all these different growers will do like in a Humboldt or Mendocino, they will all do one joint each. And you then get this advent calendar, so you get all these different joints, which I think is fucking brilliant. And I missed it last year. I definitely want to make sure I get on it this year, because that's just a great idea to do. Might as well bring it into the festivity, into the seasons, right? You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, and I do accept
Although I have
what
a
you're
feeling
saying.
that Hayes joint will disappear mighty fast. Oh look! Oh, Christmas Day. Oh, I opened it by on the day number one. Oh, I don't know how that happened.
I'm happy to announce that Tony is back.
Back.
Tony.
There he is.
Yeah.
Where'd I leave off?
You were telling us about
Here.
scraping the hash off of the
Oh, yeah.
rock.
Missouri Indica. It was in the tin. I pulled it out and rolled pinners of it after I scraped it off with my pocket knife. And that stuff was psychedelic. It was like the most intense weed I ever smoked. And it turned out it was, I figured it out years later. It was Missouri, not
Sharif.
Missouri. They misquoted it, the guy that sold it to him, and he said it was Missouri Indica. So
That's very American.
That's a great story.
You know what's interesting that you would say that there was a cultivar, I guess it was early 2000s, and Adam Dunn was visiting Canada with his girlfriend that he had been with forever, Anna Marie, if you knew Adam back in the day. This is a long time ago, like 25 plus years ago, and Adam was no stranger to quality. Like he knew Sam at that point. He knew Rob. He was like he had been exposed to extreme quality, and he was in Canada. So I was just like, oh, I got a bunch of flour, and I gave him a bunch of different bags of all these different flowers that I had, and one of them was this really beautiful flower that literally was, the name of it was Mazari Sharif, and it was clearly not Mazari Sharif. Maybe it was seeds from there that were grown here, but it was definitely not like from that area, like grown wise. And he took it. He went on his camping trip, and when he came back, he was like, "Dude, what the fuck?" He's like, "That was." He says, "I got stoned like I was in grade 8." He's like, that's the highest flowers gotten me. And I'm sure part of it had to do with that he was not in Amsterdam. He was in British Columbia with this big, vast, when you change your environment drastically, food tastes different. Dabs, it increases the quality of the experience. But yeah, that Mazari Sharif he said the same thing. He's like, dude, that was like psychedelic.
Yeah, Missouri.
They did that with we used to did all these testing on people using heroin, and if you'd put someone in a new environment and give them the same dose, they could overdose just from the environment.
Yeah.
Place, they call it like place dependence.
So the environment is definitely increasing it can increase the intensity.
I think that's the tolerance issue too, is not so much a buildup of tolerance, so much as it's a familiarity with the high. From what I've noticed, because it still only takes me a couple of hits off a pinner and I'm high on any of these varieties that I'm growing now. So it's more of like a familiarity with the high, that you get so familiar with the space that you're in and the high that you're on, that it becomes common. You take it out of that space and you put it in a new space, and it can revive a whole new set of feelings and sensations that you wouldn't have if you would have been in the same place that you were smoking it every day, all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes any sense.
I mean, it does to me, for sure. It definitely does. I have smoked everywhere, like all over, aside from maybe under the ocean. Everywhere I've gone, from the tops of mountains, like on dirt bikes and sleds and
Hey, I smoked in Disneyland.
There you
I've
go.
smoked on airplane. I smoked on the way to Jamaica.
Nice.
In a jet.
Yeah, 747. I've done the airplane puffing. That was Dave unfortunately taught that to me.
I lucked out.
Yeah, no, I got shown the full SOPs by the skunk man himself, so I was pretty good to go. He had developed a very good SOP for this process. I'm not saying he ever did it, but I am saying that he did have a very good SOP in the folder. What are you laughing at, Ryan?
He sure did. He sure did. Like he told me the SOP.
He what?
He told me the SOP.
I know, me too. I wish he never did, because here's a perfect example. I will say this. The first time I smoked full melt on a plane with Dave's SOPs, and I had eaten gummies and stuff on planes, but okay, here's the other thing. It's you got to be hyper aware and focused. You can't even allow the smallest amount of vapor to escape the suction of either your lungs or the sink or the bath. It's the sink that you blow into, but you just have to make sure none is escaping. So every bit you take, you have to hold in, then bend over and get over to and so the process is unique and different, and you do get higher in that process. And the first time I walked out of the bathroom after taking like some full melt like hit inside the bathroom, I could not believe how beyond blasted I was. Like, that is not for me an enjoyable place there's no need for it, is for me. That was just too much. I'm happy with a gummy.
Back in the
And I'm
70s,
allowed.
when I smoked on the plane, we smoked joints.
Jesus, yeah, like
out in the open.
Yeah, well, that's because they used to smoke on planes.
Yeah, it was in the smoking section, but the pilot said he was going to pull down in Houston and have the authorities waiting if we didn't put the joints out. But we'd already smoked 2 joints by then.
I flew
Bring
to
on
India.
a deflated neck pillow, right? Haven't we discussed this? Bring on a deflated neck pillow.
Yeah, put the
Take
vapor
your
in
vape
there.
pen hit underneath the hoodie and blow it into your vape pen pillow or your pillow. I even call it the vape pen pillow because that's what it is, right? And then you blow that shit out when you get to the airport, right? So you could definitely
we smoked it straight up.
Yeah, in your seat, not in the
In our
fucking
seats.
bathroom.
There
I've
was
tried
4
to-
people. We were passing joints.
I've tried
In an
to
airplane.
prop the sink open with a little piece of the cup. It doesn't work. It sucks.
Yeah, and the stewardesses were laughing, and everybody was happy until the pilot came on.
And whoever goes into the bathroom next knows. Whoever was in here just ripped a hit. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Friendly skies.
Yeah, I could see when you were talking about the SOP, I could literally see David in my mind's eye telling me how he used to smoke in the bathrooms of the planes. What a fucking character.
The Mile High Club, right?
Yeah. What are you smoking, Fletch? Are you there? Fletch is always puffing on some good hash.
Yeah, I'm chilling. Just smoking a joint. I got some AF3 Tesla hybrid.
What's AF3?
It's animal cookies face off. It's just like some gassy something old clone I made a while ago.
I'm going to take off and go eat lunch. You guys have a good one. It was great talking to you, and I'll catch you all later.
Thanks for coming, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Really appreciate
Thanks, Tony.
both you
Appreciate
and Dave. And we'll make sure we get you back on here one of these days soon.
Sure. I'll be back.
Thanks, brother.
Later.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed. Well, I mean, I'm a haze lover, so obviously I'm going to enjoy those pictures and some of that in the tin. It looked so good. I got to admit, like, I would love to be able to go to a store and like buy a tin of haze that looked like the tins that he had, or a cigar box or something. Like, you're in for that too, Brian? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
That sounds
oh my
amazing.
God. I kind of said, for me, I know we'll be there in regards to like legalization. When I can go to a store, and not like the biggest store, but just any random store for cannabis, and buy like 10 grams of full melt pure head haze hash. Like when I get there,
Right.
then you're like, look, if you can buy that, then you can surely buy anything under that, and pretty much everything else is under that, which means you have access to everything. What a beautiful thing to be able to.
I wonder how long.
How long what?
I wonder how long till we get there. Till any thoughts or.
I feel like we're closer than we've ever been. I mean, I was at a Chinese food restaurant with my friend Andy not too long ago, and I had given him a pivot, Puffco pivot. And he was all excited. He's like, "Oh, do you have any rosin?" And I'm like, "You know what? Funny enough, I don't have any on me right now." And he's like, "Oh, well, look, there's a cannabis store right there." So we like walked across the street. We went into the cannabis store. The dude that worked there was like, "Oh, Bubble Man, what's going on, man? Holy shit! I watched your show Hash Church." So that was super trippy. Then we ended up looking at the hashes. They had my friend Caitlin's hash, who's been on Hash Church many times. She does the hash for High Fidelity. I think it was like Rainbow Driver or something. We bought a gram of it, went across the street and hit our pivots and was just like, I'm watching people walk by and I'm thinking, man, like I did not grow up like this and have access to this type of material. Like some of the nicest hash oil that you could buy, just like within 100 feet of where we happen to be sitting, and go buy that and experience it. It's I think people take it for granted for how actually incredible that is.
True.
I really do. Also, how many people use these dispensaries? Because my daughter works at the one in Horseshoe Bay, where it's kind of the entrance into the Sea to Sky corridor, which is like, Lions Bay and Squamish and Whistler and Pemberton and all of these places. And she's just like, wow, every single person seems to be going in there and buying products. Whereas when she was younger, it was kind of like still illegal and she was a little bit afraid of the vibes. And now she's just like, Dad, like literally everyone is using cannabis. I'm like, yes, well, good to hear. The more of us use it, the faster we'll get to that place where we can go buy the 10 grams of dry sifted pure resin heads.
I think it'll come in also when we get to the, bridge the gap into social clubs when they're allowed and people can explore the social use factor where it's like, trying things on site quickly, go back, get another, like the Amsterdam, coffee shop vibe, where, you can try different makers or names. And, I think we're not too far off, but I think a lot of it will happen when we can use it socially. And it's like a cool thing. What's that?
Social, like consumption spots with deli style is definitely ideal. It'll be interesting because they're so terrified, right? It's so protected, which is silly because if they can do that with meat, something that you take home and eat, then they should be able to do it with, some cannabis flowers that you take home and smoke.
Right.
Yeah, when we get the international lead, you can go in and buy haze from Colombia or
amazing.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Oh my God. Dude, I would love to have a store in Canada. If I was a dispensary in Canada, it would just be a holding house for like, oh yeah, we just bring in all products from all over the world and make them available here. But then we also take all of our Canadian products and we export those to all of our partners all over the world that we're importing from. So we're not just taking material from other countries to dilute the Canadian market. Instead, we're creating a synergistic way where the Canadians are going to gain access to these wonderful, beautiful terroirs that you have expressions of, and so too shall you receive some of what we've got going on. That would be pretty nice.
That would be nice. It would kill some of the inner competition, around locally with people probably a bit more, obviously, to expand out to a worldwide web market.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's the day that I'm looking forward to for sure. But it's also nice to be visiting Quebec right now because what an incredible history this province has with hash smoking and how much they love hash in this province. It's quite something. It is really quite something. Just every once in a while, I just keep pulling these balls of hash out.
I don't know if you experience it in Maine, Brian, but we certainly experience it here, man. There's a lot of that spills over the border from Canada into like there's just like I just think about like my colleagues where I teach. There's a lot of French Canadian influence in the businesses and the stores in Vermont. I mean, it just
Yeah.
it just is, right?
Well, I'm actually 50% French Canadian. My dad's 100%, so it's only a
Pepper.
couple generations back
Yes, Steve.
from the border, you know. So we're definitely heavy influence down here in Maine. I think a big fraction of the at least Mainer population
Sure.
is literally even by bloodline, like some native tie-in and French Quebecois, French Canadian.
Yeah.
So it definitely does drift down, and obviously, like our days here, you know, aware of in Vermont for the Beaster days that I was actually straightened out. But I was straightened out back then. My friends of mine told me they were monsters. They came up for where Marcus was. They weren't coming over and going down. They were coming directly down, you know. But those times got really really horrible. Like in the beginning, they were actually decent. I'd call it maybe for what the standard was back then. You know, because even around here in my day through the 90s or not, it was still like, you know, Colombian import and, you know, brick mech and commercial grade. So like the Beasters were a step better, but then they got really horrible by the end. Like even talking mildew, they weren't even ready
Oh,
yet.
they were terrible. It was terrible,
so
but it was better than
that's
not having anything at all, right? I mean,
well, not really. I mean, what's that?
I
didn't think it was. I was ethically challenged by it. Just to bring that up, I was ethically challenged by it, and nothing against, you know, whoever's, you know, doing it, but the quality of it was so poor by the end that it was like a challenge to me. It's actually what spurred me to go to California for the 11 years, even a lot of that and the mess that people were in with it. Actually, a big mess, everyone. And I said,
a lot of people like you went to California, but a lot of people like me waited for California to come to me at the Grateful Dead show, right? So we were at the Dead shows. Again, I've said this so many times on Hash Church, buying and smoking NorCal Bud that was just so much better than the Beasters or anything that we got.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
at
like what Tony was
custy
talking about back
prices,
in the day,
though, you got to go to Cali to pick that shit up legit.
Well, we used to get like $30 quarters. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like when you start smoking sensibly, you don't go back to the old shit. But it was so cool to hear Tony talk about, you know, like, and AT, and you may remember this, just, you know, really like brick dirt weed that was really just grown in the wild, probably in some ditch somewhere along the road in Mexico somewhere. And it's dried out because it's just cut, left in the field and dried, however it's dried. Bunch of Hermes and males. It's all thrown in. And yeah, that's what we used to get in northern New Jersey. But like he said, some of these bags would have tons of seeds in them. But when you clean that weed out on your Cheech and Chong double album, right? A double record album back in the day, right? So you clean all that out, and yeah, you got really fucking high from a lot of those weed, and that's so cool to hear Tony talk about that. That even all that weed back in the day, and like I said, like if you went into New York City, it was easier to buy an 8 ball of Coke just from guy on the street than it was to buy what you got was a little $10 dime bag, which were these little manila envelopes stuffed with, you know, you're lucky if you got a joint or two out of them. It was mostly seeds and stems. But yeah, it was just, you know, nondescript.
Well,
brown
lucky you would have the bag of
Mexican.
cocaine too, right? Because it was cheaper. So you probably grabbed that as well.
By the gram, it was basically cheaper to buy Coke than it was to buy good weed. And I think that's why a lot of people got fucked up on crack in
Not
the
me. I was ethically challenged by the choice.
80s. Well, again, those of us who were on Grateful Dead tour back in the day, we knew what we liked, which was the weed that we smelled at the Grateful Dead show, which was NorCal Bud.
When I was down in the States working in the cannabis scene, I had a lot of Americans get all butthurt with me about Beasters and going on about how Canadian weed sucked, and they just didn't understand that the stuff that was being exported was not the level of the quality of Canadian cannabis.
Yeah, and it was
All
being
that, a lot of that
exported
stuff.
by Americans. They were the ones, the buyers were the ones deciding what came. It's not like as Canadians, you could just sell any shit you wanted, and no matter what, the buyers would be like, oh, this is what we're stuck with. It was the integrity of the buyer every time, always, whether they were
Yeah, well,
Canadian or American.
there was a point in time when I think again towards the end where it was like massive
bad.
biker grows and massive Asian grows that were
Yeah.
producing low quality bulk hash plant and just
Well, they
wrapping
weren't
it all
drying
up
it
in-
anymore, even. Like they just, I remember the day that the Vietnamese dudes were just like, we're not going to dry this anymore. And I was like, oh, you have to dry it. Because you have to admit, when Steve first gave them the grapefruit cut and they grew those first couple of crops, like I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah, but they expanded and started importing.
Well, it
more
just got
cheap
worse and worse and worse.
grows. Yeah.
But the fact that they were able to pull it off the first couple of times, I was like, whoa, this could change. This could change because they weren't like growing 4 lights. Like it was like the first time the one group did it, it was like 60 lights or something, which for back then was like, that's a lot of lights.
Yeah, it was a ton.
Really fucked that up.
Well, I think
It's been an
there's
interesting 30 years watching it all happen. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's an age-old relationship between Canada and North America. Has been even in the other prohibitions has been an import-export and supply-demand, and the American vacuum.
Especially with booze, right? Especially with booze.
Yeah.
And Kennedy's dad was a rum runner. Kennedy's dad was a rum runner, and he became president. Like that kind of power.
Yeah, even maple syrup. As it turns out, there's more maple trees in Canada than there are in Vermont.
I'm surrounded by maple trees and maple syrup right now. I had maple syrup for breakfast. I'm not going to lie, with blueberry pancakes. Thank you, Neil.
Nice.
I spent the last 5 days in a depressing motel that kept telling me to kill myself. Luckily, I didn't listen, and I smoked a lot of dabs. But now I'm at like my good friend's house, and it's just really nice here. His birds like chirping in the background. If I hear a thump, 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 it's his dog's tail like smacking against the chair. It's like all happy vibes.
You gotta find yourself an authentic poutine if you can.
Do you think we'd be able to find an authentic poutine, Neil?
Well, you need a.
He said, "Fuck yeah."
Yeah, but you're not going to want to have the beef gravy. You're going to need some.
Well, he said a lot of the gravies are vegan, and he's a chef. Because I also thought it was all beef gravy.
Oh.
He's saying a lot of it's vegan.
Oh,
I had no.
Wow,
that's not a. You weren't pulling my leg. No. Really? I don't think a lot of people know that. You didn't even say vegetarian. You said.
Makes a great base. And like a lot of people twist it to their things, but it's a great vegan.
Yeah.
Huh.
Damn good.
Okay. All right.
yeah. You just use vegetable bouillon and make a gravy out of that, right? That's right.
I always assumed that 99% of poutine would have like beef gravy in it. So I just like eat the cheese curds that they sold.
I think traditionally it does, doesn't it?
I would say traditionally it does, but apparently it's not all.
So yummy.
Yeah.
Montreal.
Quebec gas stations, they sell cheese curds, and American gas stations, they sell THCA hemp flour.
Yeah. Well, true. Montreal, I think, has some food I've ever had. The little bit of traveling I've done, some of the highest quality food in the world.
Okay. Yeah, Montreal's on point for sure. I got good food here.
Gonna get you to Barcelona, Ryan.
Ooh, yeah. I had plans back right on the year of the pandemic to go to the Spanibus, and obviously that happened and it knocked all of it off. But I'm hoping to go in maybe the next year even, and I know they're putting it at a different venue, and would hear about other stuff going on too. Talk to you about that sometime.
Yeah, the Basque Country where it is next year is beautiful up there. It's just incredible. It's very much geography like New England or Nova
Are you
Scotia.
gonna go, Ryan?
I would like to. I don't have solid plans, but I'd like to restore that pipe dream or dream
But
again to
when
go.
is it?
It'll be at the same
always
time.
right
I
around my
think.
birthday.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. When's your birthday, Ryan?
11th of March.
Get out of here. Mine's on March 12th.
Oh wow, there you go.
Well,
I know
the kicker
someone
for
like
me is the C&D is around that too. It depends on when the UN decides, but I'll be there either before or after, or so that's very doable depending, because that's usually when the C&D is usually the 10th through the 16th.
Well, it's
in
a new
Vienna.
year. It's no longer in
That'd be so
Barcelona.
cool.
We
It's
won't
gonna
know.
set.
We won't know until December when they release the dates for the UN.
Right.
But guys, we
they've
should
got
definitely
incredible
hook up
food up in
again,
that part of
because
Spain.
I'm Basque. You'll see a whole bunch of people like we with big earlobes, little bellies. Yeah, it's great. All short. It's great. It's my people.
It's really neat up there. It's like it's a very ancient culture that is not related to all the other kind of lineages of Spain. If you look at the language, it's totally different. The way
Yeah.
the alphabet and everything is structured, it's completely different. Different lineage.
It predates all European languages for sure. One of the and realized that the language was outlawed under Francisco Franco. So when I first, because I'm part Basque, so when I visited Basque country, the first thing I did, which you saw here, Ryan, is I have a Basque dictionary, which
Right.
which those were illegal. So I had to, first thing I did in country there was grab that, and of course then Yemon, Iberico. And then you realize that when chocolate was outlawed, I don't know if people realize this, but in Europe, chocolate made women horny, and the church didn't like that. So they made chocolate illegal, and the Basque hid the Jewish chocolatiers. And so in San Sebastian, there's the actual chocolate museum. And in town there's two of the best fucking chocolatiers you'll ever go to in your life. Because the Basque protected. So the Basque hate prohibition. So early on when I first went in 2002, the Basque were selling cannabis seeds in their grow stores, back then, and selling. I remember seeing Jorge Cervantes copies of his grow book. That was it.
Yeah, it's an interesting region. They've got like redheads there that are completely unrelated, like genetically, like the line is different from people that were from Scotland. So from like the kind of the Gaelic clans. So it's a super old culture that probably came from somewhere like Eastern European kind of thing.
I met some really interesting folks there that sounds like what you're talking about. Red hair, super long dreads, and it was like, say, 10 years ago in the Caribbean, and I was sailing with some folks, and they pulled up in like this. I'm not kidding. It sounds like it's a story, but it's a real one. They're in like a pirate ship with wooden masts, and the people I were with my ex, were actually, they spoke Spanish. And so they were getting down, talking to him, and it was crazy. It was like these long dreadlocks, and I find out I'm talking to them about, growing, and I'm in California, what I do. And it turns out that they're literally sailing from Spain. They live in the Basque off grid, like 40 hectare type of situation. They do all their own work. They grow it. They have like silver pearl and classic strains, like I'd say the 90s circa strains, and skunk and Afghani, and they were exporting it over to South America by pirate ship. And literally it was one of the craziest stories I ever heard, but I believe it, because they're like, next thing you know, in the morning, before we could even like say hi, I was hoping to get some herb from them, they were ghosted. Like, you didn't hear a thing and they were gone. But they did it every year. They said they trimmed their own and they exported out over to, well, it was somewhere Colombia, basically.
That's crazy. I can't imagine them getting more money there than they would like over the border in France.
Well, no, they were actually, the more story goes on, they were exporting it for another import item, by which they then sailed back over with the import item that they traded value for, and then did their thing. And they were like totally upfront, like almost like proud, just type truth about it with what they did for years.
Nice.
It was really wild. but they're from the Basque.
The geography is really beautiful there. I mean, most of Spain is quite red and dry, but in that northwestern corner, it's very similar to the coast of like Nova Scotia and New England, right? That land was connected at one point in time, right? So it's actually the same geography, but it's just separated by the Atlantic Ocean. It's really beautiful, incredibly beautiful up there.
Sounds like it. I'd love to go there.
It's just separated by the Atlantic Ocean.
Only, yeah.
That's awesome. But I definitely understood what you were saying too, in the grand scheme of global creation and evolution. They broke off and just separated. Now there's a bit of water, just a little bit of water, like 8 trillion gallons.
Well, if you measure New York versus London or New York versus Paris, they get 2 centimeters farther apart every year. Really? Right, so because of the mid-Atlantic spreading ridge, as they call it, it's like,
well, to the point where they'll touch on the back of the globe eventually.
Eventually, yeah, we're gonna have a new Pangea in like however many million years.
Crazy. So it goes.
Africa's splitting apart now.
Right, I guess the Maldives are sinking.
Yeah, and they're going to create a new ocean there when Africa finally splits enough.
Yep.
Well, hopefully it brings some peace. Well, I got about 22 minutes left on the clock. We could do it. We could also cut it short to you guys. I'm flying home tomorrow after being away for the last 8 days, so I am looking forward to relaxing today on my buddy's property and just chilling out and making some tomato sauce and some pizza dough and what else?
Were you down near Sherbrooke?
Sauce. Am I down near Sherbrooke? Yeah. No?
We're about 2 hours.
Oh, we're about 2 hours. Sherbrooke.
Halfway.
Not quite there. I was closer to Dr. Mark though for the last 6 days. I will, Brian. I will. For the last 6 days, I was 1 hour and 17 minutes by car away from Dr. Mark. Like we were like, we were going to link up, and we did not.
I felt your presence.
Nice. Nice. I was like, man, tell you, I had a car. I got a really nice car, this little hybrid Volvo thing, and it only does 40 kilometers on electric, but I've mostly only used electric. I think I've used maybe like 30 kilometers of gas so far. Very convenient little car. And it was also sweet because where I was working at this facility, they have like a parking lot right in front of the front door for the C-suite. And then they have a giant parking lot for the like hundreds of people that work at the facility over here. And all the C-suite parking is reserved except 2 spots that are electric car spots. And every day that I went there, there was 1 spot open there. So I was just parking with the C-suites the whole time I was there. Yeah, it's nice. It was like 1 kilometer away. I'm telling you, it was ridiculous. Like,
sounds like you got a charge out of that.
I got a good charge out of that every day. 40 kilometers worth. 40 kilometers worth. 40 kilometers worth. Well, maybe we'll call it a day. I appreciate you guys, each and every one of you coming on.
Yeah,
Thank
Mark
you.
got his dad joke in, so we're good.
Yeah, the dad jokes it was sort of like, okay, I guess we're good now. No, I'm gonna go hang out with my buddy and smoke these dabs out of the Turp koozie here. Next week we'll check out those videos that Brian sent me because they're really inspirational. I'll be on my home computer instead of this laptop. And we'll do that. Thanks to Puffco and the Press Club and Bubble Bags for sponsoring Hash Church. And thanks to the Buddalero for Dave and Tony for coming in, and Archive for chilling out with us. And Ryan coming in and schooling us all for a while. That was fun too. I kind of felt like we were getting in trouble by the principal a little bit, but I also was kind of like super stoked about it. So thank you, Ryan. Don't ever stop doing that. Diana was also like, I was waiting for Ryan to come in and drop some knowledge. I could read her in the chat. She's like, oh, finally, Ryan's coming in. He's dropping some knowledge. I was like, yes, he is. Thanks to Etienne and Dr. Mark and Caleb and everyone else that is watching. We sure appreciate you guys. I guess we'll see you next week. May the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. And a sayonara. See you later.
Safe
Peace.
travel, dude.
Peace.
Alone.
Hey, hey.
Thank you.